Blender looks like this, where like everything is really super tiny and you have to squint to see it. So underneath interface, I change my resolution scale to at least a 1.5, usually like 1.8. But for tutorials, I go even higher so you can really see everything. But it's obviously much easier to use when you can see things clearly. Okay, so middle mouse drag, that's how you orbit around. You can see we're focusing on our cube at the moment though. So how do we move to somewhere else? You do that by shift middle mouse drag, and that will pan you somewhere else. You can also, over here on the side there, click that little hand, that will do the same thing. But yeah, shift middle mouse drag or middle mouse drag to orbit. And what about zoom? You can probably guess, you might have already done it by mistake, but just zooming by scrolling in and out on your wheel. Or again, you can go to the little magnifying glass there, just click on that and do that. Or alternatively, control middle mouse, and then that will also move you in as well. So I've thrown a lot of keyboard shortcuts at you already. Middle mouse for this, shift middle mouse to pan, scroll. If you don't want to have to remember all the hotkeys, because I'm going to throw a lot more at you. If you don't want to have to write them down yourself, I have done it for you. So I put together a Google Doc with all of the most common hotkeys and shortcuts that you might need to use. And it's free. So just click the link below and you can print it out. You can stick it on your wall. A lot of people do that, and it's a big time saver. Okay, now it's really common to like get lost. Like one way is to like end up upside down like this. And then you're like, which way is up? How do I, if you just over here, this gizmo thing, these colored circle things with lines, those are your axes. So if you just click on one of those, that'll reorient yourself. So the Z, that's the top axis, and then you're back, right? You know which way is up because it's that way, right? Which way that one is pointing. Another way, like if you got like really off into the weeds, like you were over here, and then you're like, how do I get back to where I was? If you've got an object selected and you just want to focus on, like just fly to it, and this is a really common hotkey, you use it all the time, it's numpad period, and that'll just fly you to that. If you don't have a numpad, like even a lot of keyboards today, they don't sell them with numpads anymore, I guess because people aren't accountants, they don't need to quickly type in numbers, but I love them because it's really useful for Blender. If you don't have one, you can also use the tilde key, which is that little key underneath your escape key. So if you hold that down and then just drag over where it says view selected and then release, that'll do the exact same thing. So that is how you can quickly change focus to the selected object. And yeah, as I said, you do this all the time. But yeah, I'm going to be using numpad period from now on. Okay, so we're making a donut. We do not need our cube here, so let's delete it. You can just hit delete on your keyboard, or what I like to do is hit X, which is the alternative way. And it's just easier because my finger is like right there. I know it's another hotkey to remember, but you delete stuff a lot as well, and it's helpful to not have to find that key. So X and then delete. And now I want to add a new object, and I can do that by going to add at the top of the screen there, or alternatively, the hotkey, another one to throw at you, Shift A, and that'll just put it wherever your cursor is, and it's the exact same list. But this list here is, it's extensive. There's stuff in here that I have never used in my 21 years of using Blender. Speaker, never, ever used it, don't know what it's for. Most of the time what you're looking for is underneath mesh. So these are your primitive mesh objects. And generally when you're making something, you pick one of these that most resembles or is closest to what it is you're making. Like if you're making a mailbox, you might start with a cube. You're making a lamp post, you might start with a cylinder. We're trying to make a donut, so we need to start with a torus, which is basically a donut. Look at that. So that's cool. It's a wimpy looking donut though, right? It's very, very flimsy. We want to make it look more thicker, right? So in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little box that says add torus, and this has additional options for us. Now, if you accidentally clicked off after you added the torus, that box is gone. You can momentarily bring it back by hitting F. Nine, but that's only if you haven't changed something. So essentially, yeah, it's called the last used function in Blender. So that immediately after you do an action in Blender, sometimes you see in the bottom left-hand corner additional options which you can tweak and change things if you need. So if you don't see it, it just means you've done something else and it's gone. But yeah, you can bring it back momentarily by hitting F9 sometimes. But I usually just like redo it. Anyways. So first thing I want to change is the size of this thing. So it is 1 meter, which is like 3 feet for the Americans. It's a big donut. Probably shouldn't be that big. It should be about 10% of that. So 0.1, which is 10 centimeters, roughly about that. And then if I zoom in by scrolling forward, I just need to change my minor radius until it looks somewhat like a donut. So I want to just orbit up, right, and around. So I'm just middle mouse moving so I can see the inside. Then I'll just scroll in like so until, yeah, and I'm just going to change this value until it looks like a donut. Now you can see as I move this, like it's going really quick and I can't get it on the right value. So when you're clicking and dragging on a value in Blender, if you hold down Shift, that will use smaller increments. And that's another one you use all the time. Because it's, yeah, sometimes you need small values and it's helpful to get smaller increments like that. So that's pretty good. I might go with that. Yeah, about a 0.057. Okay. And then the other thing you can change here is like the resolution of the donut. You know, you can go like really PlayStation 1 graphics, maybe. I'm going to keep it at 48, but I'm going to increase the other one to about, yeah, let's go 18, like that. 16, 18, yeah, we'll go 18. And that's just a little bit more resolution, and it's just gonna I got big bands on me when I stepped out on the scene. Bitch, I'm rollin' OG, got me a whole LP. They ain't spinning what they say, but you know Ollie really with it. I got polo on my body, yeah. Help us a little bit later on when we start to shape the donut. Okay, but once I've got that, I can just click off, and now those options are gone. We've committed. That's it. That is the starting point of our donut. Now, the next thing you're probably wondering is, it still kind of looks like PlayStation 1 graphics, Andrew. And that's because it has flat shading. So basically there's two states for a mesh. There's smooth shading or there is flat shading, and it defaults to flat. If you want to change it to smooth, you just right click the object and then go shade smooth, like that. And there we go, it's fixed. So basically shade smooth without getting too technical. And if you want to change it to smooth, you just right click the object and then go shade smooth, like that. And there we go, it's fixed. So basically shade smooth without getting too technical. Anytime there is like two faces, it just kind of smooths out that point, like fakery. So it's not actually adding any additional computation times, which is important, but it's appearing to the eye to be smooth. Okay, so in previous donut versions, we would start making the icing. And although that's fun to make like dribbling icing, it can be a little complicated. A lot of users ran into their first roadblocks at that time. So instead, we're going to do something a little bit easier to start with and more practical, and that's to make a coffee mug. So we need to add in a new object, which if you can remember from before, it's the add menu at the top there, or the hotkey, as I like to use, Shift A. And then underneath mesh, you're looking for something that most resembles the object you're trying to create. No prizes for guessing, the cylinder. Okay, so it comes in very, very big. It's completely engulfing our donut. So again, in the bottom left-hand corner, click that little add cylinder, and then I'm going to change the radius first of all, just to bring this back. You can like do this after the fact, like resize something, but it just helps to, you know, at this point, see it all together. I think I'm going to make it around holding down Shift and just kind of drag it back and forth. Yeah, about 0.13 or exactly 0.13. And then the depth, this is just the height of it. And again, you can change this later on, but just want to see it roughly the right size. The big one that's important is the vertices. And we're actually going to make this look more low res. Now, why would we make it look more low res? Because now it's obviously very jagged. The reason for this is that very soon we're going to be adding in something called a subsurf modifier, which adds over the top of our existing mesh. It adds more geometry, like it doubles the geometry and it kind of smooths it out. So actually, if you start too high like this, then you're adding, like doubling that geometry and doubling it again, and then you can quickly end up with something that's too computationally heavy. So when you're working and you know you're going to be doing something subdiv, sometimes it helps to start like chunkier, low res. Anyway, just trust me and set it to 14 like that. Okay, great. So we've got another object and they are completely overlapping. So how do we separate things? Some of you might already know this. You can guess, right? Left-hand side there's a tool that looks like it would be able to move something. It's the move tool. So this is one way to move things. You activate that and you get this little gizmo, and look, I can move it and I can separate them. So this is moving things along the axes. You can also just drag on that, click and drag on that little white circle there, and then that's like freehand drag around. I will say most Blender users don't actually use and move things this way because it's a lot of effort every time you want to move something to like go to the sidebar, activate the tool, you know, click it, move it. It's like most people don't do that. Instead, they remember the hotkey, and the hotkey to move in Blender, and you'll be using this a lot. So again, this is on my keyboard shortcut. It's all in there, but the hotkey is G for grab. Now, you will notice very quickly that when you tap G, the moment you tap it, you are already in the move state. So it's now attached to my cursor, even though I didn't click, okay? So, and here's the other thing. My cursor could be on the other side of the screen. It doesn't have to be anywhere near the object. And then the moment you tap G, it's now anchored to that cursor. And even more, I think it's cool, when you go to the other side of the screen, it actually, your cursor appears on the other side. So it's just like an infinitely repeating thing there. But at first, this is like hard to wrap your head around because Blender does this for a lot of things, like not just moving something, but also rotating something. The moment I tap R, which is how to rotate something, or S, okay, I thought I might as well just teach you all three at the same time. So G to move something, G for grab, R to rotate, or S to scale something. But you'll see in each of those states, the moment you hit the key, no matter where your cursor is, it's in that state. And that's actually a good thing because, as I said, the number of times you need to move things and rotate and scale things in 3D, if you had to every single time change the tool, then move your cursor over to it, click it, activate it, that's a lot of extra steps. So it's actually really cool to have this like just one tap key and it's already activated. Anyways, okay, so, but whilst I'm in the move state by tapping G, I can also lock it to a specific axis, just like with those arrows that you saw before. So just when it's in that move state, you tap the axes you want to move it on. So that's the X axis, the Y brings it back and forwards, and the Z is up and down, okay? And that's correct. Blender is Z up, Y backwards and forwards. Different 3D applications have different things. There's no like standard, but yeah, that's how Blender's is. And by the way, if you forget which letter is which axis, you can actually see them up there in that little circle there. So again, X, Y, and Z. Anyways, I want to move this actually just a little bit further back right there. So I want my donut to be the front and center, and I want this to be at the back there. But then how do I change my view so I'm no longer just pivoting on my donut? I want to shift my focus to that selected object. It's number pad period. Or again, holding down that tilde key under your escape button and then hitting view selected is the same thing. Okay, so let's make this look like a coffee mug. So we have to edit this object, and to edit an object, we have to change what mode we are in. So in the top left-hand corner of the screen, there's a little drop down, which if you click, we can change it into edit mode. Okay, so when you're in edit mode, you can see the state has changed. The object that was selected now has a bunch of points and lines on it. And you'll also notice whilst you're in edit mode, you can't actually select any object. And it's worth pointing out this because this is a really common thing. A lot of beginners, they say, I don't know what happened, but I couldn't select anything in Blender. And usually it's just they're in the wrong state. They're in edit mode, they forgot, and then they tried to like come over here and then click something and they're like, why is it not selecting? Okay, so you have to be in object mode if you want to select an object. And if you want to edit something, you have to be in edit mode. But going to this drop down and doing this time and again would, again, be annoying. So Blender, of course, has a hotkey for it, and that is Tab. So Tab will just cycle you in and out of object and edit mode, just those two states, which is great because you need to use this all the time. So you usually come in, do some editing, go back into object mode, select something else, edit that one, go back to this. So that's, yeah, good one to remember, Tab. All right, so in edit mode, when I'm in this state here, these little points here, these are called vertices. These are the points that make up the the shape of the mesh, obviously. And then you've got edges, and you can actually select by changing the selection type from vertices, which is the default, to edges, clicking that little button, and then I can click on the edges or select faces, okay, like this. And again, Blender has hotkeys for everything. So if you want to just know the hotkey, it's 1 to do vertices select, 2 to do edge select, and then 3 to do face select. Again, make sure you get my keyboard shortcut guide because it's a lot to remember. So I want to select the top of this cup here. It's got a lid on it that I don't want. So in face select mode, selecting that face, I'm going to hit X. Now it's going to ask me, what part do you want to delete? Which might sound redundant, but there is quite a lot of times in Blender you want to delete, even though you've selected a bunch of faces, you want to delete the entire vertices of those faces. So we have to confirm we want to delete just the faces from this list, and there we go. So we've now got a cup with a hole in it. Great. But this cup will not do. It is too paper thin. We could cut our finger on that edge there. So we need to add some thickness to this cup. And while we could do this in edit mode, like you could select everything and extrude it in and whatnot, we don't need to because there is actually a function we can do to add thickness to anything without needing to go into edit mode. And that is underneath your modifier stack here. So if you click this little wrench, this will activate modifiers. Let's just drag this out. And if you click add modifier at the top there, you can see you've got a number of different options. And the one that we're looking for is solidify. So this is underneath the generate. And just in case this changes for a future version of Blender, you can also go to search at the top there, and you could just type in solidify from the list. Okay, so now that we've got that, you can see we've got a bunch of options, and you'll notice that our mesh now has some thickness to it. And I can change this thickness here. Now, watch what happens as I enter into edit mode. You will notice, as I select these faces here, I can't select this inside part of the cup there. And that's an important point because modifiers are not actually adjusting the real mesh. So the real mesh still exists here. If I disable this from the viewport by clicking this little monitor button there, you'll see that my mesh has not changed. This is just applying this effect after the fact. So it's basically in object mode. It's taking whatever mesh that you give it, which is this, and then it's adding thickness to every face, essentially. So the reason this is so useful is that this is a non-destructive workflow. So I could, at any point, I could be doing a bunch of changes to my mug here. I could, we'll get to all that later on. We could change the size and things. And then later on I can go, you know what? I think that's a little bit too thick. I'm going to change that. And I can come back to that and very quickly adjust it. So non-destructive, and it's obviously very helpful for a lot of things. Okay, so I've given it some thickness, but I also want to round this corner here. That's way too jagged. Just like before I said, we're going to add in an extra layer on top, which adds more geometry, and that is called your add modifier, generate subdivision surface. So yeah, all the way down there. You use it all the time, but it's like buried in there. Okay, so subdivision surface. So this appears to have like screwed up the mesh. It's like, whoa, what actually happened there? Let's just increase the levels viewport. So this is just increasing the number of times that it doubles the geometry. So you can see this is what we start with, right? This is the start. This is one level. Then this is 2 levels. And then this is 3 levels, and every time you do it, it's doubling the geometry. But you can see it's giving us the effect we want. It's smoothing out that edge there. But because of the way that it works, like basically, if you look at, let's go back to this, we've got this hard corner here, right? That's just like a 90-degree corner. So let me get in a little bit closer here so you can kind of see it. Yeah, it's like a 90-degree, perfectly like that. So when you add in a subdivision surface, it's basically saying, okay, so there's a point here, there is a point all the way over here, and there is a point that's going to go all the, like it's so far it's off the screen, but it's all the way down there. So what I need to do is I need to average out those points. So take the middle point of those 3. So essentially from here to somewhere around here, and I'm going to add in a point like here. Right? And then if you do another level, like level 2, it then places a point here, and then another point here. And then if you do another level, it places another point here, another point here, another point here. And because there's 2 sides to this mug, there's like another one happening on that side, right? So we've now just got this like really super like oval shaped edge like this, okay? Which is why when I turn it on, we get this effect there. So what we first of all need to do in edit mode with our mug here. So I am in, actually it doesn't matter what mode I'm actually in here. But what I need to do is essentially tighten an edge where that smoothing is happening. So it's no longer happening from all the way here to smooth it all the way down to there. I want to happen at like just to about there. So I need to add in more geometry onto this mesh here. So to do that, we need to add a loop cut. That is how you add in another level of another edge. So Control R will add in this loop cut. I believe you can also find it from the mesh, somewhere in here. Yeah, there you go. Edge, loop cut and slide if you wanted to look it in there. But it's, yeah, Control R. That's another one you use all the time. So when I hit Control R, it's saying, where do you want to place the cut in this mesh? And I could place it, anywhere between a face, essentially. So I'm going to place it along this middle. So you do a single click, and then it's saying, where do you want to place that vertically on this this row of faces, essentially. So you can see as I bring it towards the top there, it's tightening that edge there. Okay, and that's exactly what I want. I want that edge to be much tighter than it was before. So that edge is now looking good, but now what about this one at the bottom there? This one's looking even worse. We've got a lot to fix here. But first I need to do another loop cut. So Control R, and then again, single click to confirm I want it on that row of faces. And then I'm just sliding it along until it's, roughly about there at the bottom of my mug. Okay. And then you can see it's like this whole area here, this face here, it's become like it's turned it into a star. And not to get too complicated, but basically a subsurf modifier, it has to know what to do. And generally if there's like faces that are made up of 4 vertices, this is getting complicated, I can tell. It knows what to do. It makes it like nice and smooth. But the moment you have a face that is made up of more than 4 vertices. It's called an n-gon, and it doesn't really know what to do with it. I mean, it does, but you don't know what it's going to do, and it just can make things look a little ugly. N-gon is kind of like a dirty word in 3D space. It's like, you never want to have an n-gon. They are actually useful, and they do have a purpose, but generally speaking, they're good to avoid if you don't know what you're doing. So anyway, I should tell you what I'm doing. The way to fix this is I need to add another loop that kind of just goes around here, right there. So that way I've only got from there to there, and then I can have my ugly star or whatever happening underneath my coffee mug. So I need to add a loop cut, but I can't add a loop cut on just a single face. Instead, what I need to do is, it's called inset, to take a single face and then just like add in a loop around that face. And you do that by hitting I. So I, and then just like, it's already active. Again, this is the way, this is why I spent a while to explain it. The moment you activate a tool, you're already in that selection state. So I hit I, and wherever my cursor is, it's now going like, where do you want to put this inset? Okay. So I'm just moving it back and forth until I get it. How tight do I want this edge to look? Something like that, maybe. I mean, it's underneath the coffee mug. It doesn't really matter that much, but yeah, something like that. And there we go. So you can see this looks a lot nicer. And again, because we are in a non-destructive workflow, I've still got my solidify modifier at the top here, right? I could change the thickness of this. I can make this a really chunky looking coffee mug or a really thin one. And that is the benefit of a non-destructive workflow. And then I can also change how high res do I want my coffee mug to look. And this is the way to work in 3D. This is the best way to do it because, if a client wants you to change something or whatnot, keeping in a flexible workflow is definitely a good place to be. Okay, so we have created the start of a coffee mug, and we have also created a donut. Good time to save. Good time to save. So File, Save As, or Shift Control S, and then Save As. So the way I like to save things, you might want to copy this, is to, you come up with a name, underscore whatever, and then you put a number after it. And then you can actually see I've already saved my file. I don't want to override my existing save in case I need to go back to it for whatever reason. So I just want to add a number to it. And in other softwares, you have to come here and you have to type in the number, right? Not Blender. Blender has a hotkey for everything. If you hit plus or minus on your numpad, or on the little field here. Oh, you can't even see it. I'm right over the top of it, right there. This little field, these little plus and minus, it'll automatically add a number to the end of your file. So that's, yeah, really useful. So I'm just gonna add a 2 there, and I'm gonna hit save. It is time to make our coffee mug look like a coffee mug and not like a sad little cup. So we could try to model this from our imagination, because hey, we all pick up coffee mugs, we know what they look like, or we think we know what they look like. Something that you learn very quickly in 3D is that when you model something from imagination, it almost always comes out looking a little bit funny. And the reason for that is that your brain is very good at abstracting away the information that isn't important to it. If you just close your eyes right now and just think of a doorknob. What does a doorknob look like, right? If you had to make one in Blender, what would it be? It's okay, well, it's like a sphere bit. You grip it, you turn it, and there's a cylinder thing at the back, and there's a cylinder that connects it, and that's kind of it. But then if you were to make that, you end up with something that looks really basic and boring and bad. And then you go actually look at a real doorknob and you forget there's all this other detail that's just not important to your brain, like the little lip inside, the little hole that's on there that's so you can put a key in to kind of pry it open, or a rim that kind of cuts into it, so there's a separate seam around it. There's the privacy lock on the front. All these things that just don't matter to you when you're turning a handle, and so you forgot that they even existed because you never even saw it really. So the same thing applies to even something as common as a coffee mug. So it helps, when possible, to use reference images. Now, you can get reference images from anywhere because we have the power of the internet. And you can type in handmade coffee mug and you can pick any mug you want to create. There's a lot. And, if you want to pick one of these, if you want to just go on Google Images, you can pick one of these and go for it. I'm going to give you an image that I've used, but there's some really pretty ones here. And I was actually shocked just whilst clicking on some of these sites before. I was like, oh yeah, that's a cute little handmade mug. And then you go oh my gosh, $123.25. And that's a discount from $145. And then you think oh, it must be a one of one, a unique thing. No, there's 9 reviews. People are buying it. I'm I don't know. I gotta make more money or something. I don't know how people are buying $123 coffee mugs. I think it's also we forget what labor costs, you think a coffee mug is $2, right? Or $1, or it's free. It's just, there's so many of them, it doesn't even matter. But no, to hand make something, obviously any of these mugs, they take more than a few hours to make if you're making it by hand. So yeah, $33 is probably break even for them. Probably not even making any money, but it's just yeah, anyways, whole side topic of the economy of handmade ceramic mugs, but people are buying for $123. All right, so all that is to say is I want you to get an image, and the one I'm going to use, the link for this is below, and it's on my website. I've got all the links to everything we're going to be using in this tutorial. But there's 2 ways to add images. So one way is to go to the add menu and then just go image and then say reference. And then you just pick wherever the reference is, and you can drop it in. The alternative way, and it's something that we didn't used to be able to do, and that's to just drag over. over from wherever it is on your computer and then just drop it into Blender, and it will recognize it as an image and it will bring it in as an image object. So either of those ways will work. So this is the image. This is the one we're going to use. Now, if you quickly orbit around, you'll notice that it's come in at a funny angle. Now, But I don't know why Blender does this. I think it's because they think people want it locked to the perspective that they were at when they brought it in there, but I've never needed that. So we just need to clear this rotation and then rotate it to the way we want. So to clear the rotation, I'm gonna hit Alt R. The alternative way, Object, Clear, Rotation, Alt R, same thing. The alternative way to the way we want. So to clear the rotation, I'm going to hit Alt R. The alternative way, Object, Clear, Rotation, Alt R, same thing. Now it's flat. So now we need to rotate it, prop it upright so that it is flat onto, you know, how it should be relative to the scene. So I need to rotate it. So I'm going to hit R. So but we're now in freehand rotate mode. And it's, again, it's relative to where we were looking at it, which is, this funny angle. So if you remember from before, when we're in a move state, like rotate, scale, or grab, we can lock something to a specific axis whilst we're in this mode by just tapping the letter of that axis. And if you don't know the letter, you can see we really want it on this red line here. And that red top right-hand corner, that is the X axis. So I'm gonna hit X. There we go. So now it is locked to that axis, which is good. And now we want it to be 90 degrees. So you could either hold down Control, and you can see in the top, what that does is that's now moving it in 5-degree increments. Or you could just type in the number 90 on your keyboard and then hit enter. And there we go. So that's how we bring it in and clear the rotation and set it up. So, all right, now it's way too big. So hotkey to scale something, S, okay, S to scale. And now I'm just gonna scale this down and I can't see my mug. So my mug is behind it. So let me just move my mug. I'll move my mug forward. So let's move it forward to there. Okay, all right. And then now, I'm gonna look at it like front on. Okay, so I can do that by clicking this little -Y at the top there. That'll do front on. Or the hotkeys, because I use my numpad. For those of you blessed with a numpad, you'll like it. You can hit numpad 1, that's front view, numpad 3, that's side view, or numpad 7, that is top view. But I use those a lot, but again, you can use these if you don't have it. Okay, so front view, and then I'm gonna scroll in to zoom, shift middle mouse to pan to the side. And now I'm gonna move this over here and I'm gonna scale this down again to get it roughly to be the size of my mug here. Because I know that this mug is right relative to the donut, so it should be good. And then what I'm looking at for the size of this image here is I want the top of this rim here to roughly match the bottom down there. So this, like, I want that to match that. So it's still a little bit too big. And you'll notice I can't really easily do it from this angle. I mean, I can, but the problem is that this photograph is taken with a camera from the real world where there is perspective. But we are looking in 3D, and actually when we're in an axis like this, the reason it all becomes flattened is because it is in perspective mode. If you click that little button there, that'll actually put you back into perspective mode, and you can see how things get distorted and like angles and things. So the best reference is actually reference, which is in orthographic, like blueprints for something, but you usually don't have that. So you just go from something like this and just kind of best guess it. Anyways, okay, cool. So that's roughly the right size of image. Now we can model by going into edit mode, by hitting tab, toggle in and out of edit mode, and we can start to shape this to look like this mug here. So the first thing that we'll notice is like the general broad shape of the mug is that it actually kind of tapers towards the top. Both lines are kind of tapered upwards. And then there's a kind of a midpoint around about here where it starts to invert and it goes in the other direction. Okay, so it's a very smooth object and perfect for using Subsurf Modifier, which is what we've already got. So to get that taper going up to the side, I want to shrink the top of the mug here just a little bit. So I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to go into Edge Select mode at the top there, and then Alt, and then just left click on that line, not on like a middle point like here, or it'll select a different edge, but just on the middle there. And then now I want to scale this in to just shrink the size just a little bit. So I'm going to scale that to there, and then I'm going to select the line underneath it, and I'm going to do the same thing. So Alt click on that line, that edge, and then just scale it, about halfway there. Now I want to create this like widened point right here, and you can see like from here, like there's a lip at the bottom, but like from here to here, and then it goes up. I'd say probably 20% up the mug. That's where that middle point is. So this line is close, but I'd probably pull it up a little bit. So I'm going to double tap G, and that'll let me slide that edge there, and I'll put it to, it's about there. And now I want to pull it out to make it a little bit thicker. So I'm going to hit S and just pull that out to about there. And now I can see this line here is not quite right. So I'm going to scale this one out as well, just a little bit. Okay, that's roughly the right shape. Okay, now this bit at the bottom here. Okay, so I can see already that I need a little bit more detail. So I'm actually gonna have to slide this line up here. So I'm gonna hit double G to just kind of slide it up, and I'm gonna pull it to about there. You can see now we've got kind of a more curved taper on that edge there, and I'm gonna hit S to scale. And I'm gonna double tap G again. And I'm just by eye, just guessing to try to get this form here. But you can see, you can very quickly start to shape any sort of object you want by just moving, sliding lines around, and scaling things. Okay, so now obviously this face at the bottom here, so if I go into face select mode, or by just hitting 3, this has to be this little lip at the bottom there. What do you call that? I guess like a lip? Probably a word for it. All the pottery people watching this tutorial are gonna tell me what it is, and they'll also tell me about the price of manual labor and why that coffee mug was quite well priced, I'm sure. Anyways, I'm going to, I'll scale it in a little bit. I'm just trying to guess like where would it start, but you just do it by eye. I think about there. Okay, and now with this face here selected, I need more geometry, because I want to actually pull it out from that face there. But I can't just like pull it down, right? Because now it's stretching it. I need more geometry. And so that is called an extrusion. And thankfully, the hotkey for extrusion is just the first letter of its name, which is E. E for extrusion. And just like inset and everything else in Blender, the moment you tap it, you're now in that mode. I can pull it upwards, I can pull it downwards. Obviously downwards is what we want. So I'm gonna do a single click right there. Okay. And then now, if I go back and just look at it in object mode, and by the way, if you wanna see it like the donut, you wanna make it look smooth, you can as well by going to shade smooth. And that's okay, but you can see that this line here, this is a much tighter line, okay? And the reason that this is happening is, of course, because of Subsurf Modifier. And the way that it works, it's essentially going from here to here, and then kind of like, I guess like a midpoint in the middle there, and it's trying to taper from there all the way in. But then also from this point here, it now has to taper from there to kind of smooth out that line. So we end up with just kind of like this like very smoothed out little nub. But to fix it, we just have to add in more geometry so that it doesn't start the smooth so much further up. So to do that, we need another loop cut, which you might remember the hotkey, or you can find it in the menu, Edge, Loop Cut, and Slide, but it is Control R. So Control R, when you're in this mode, where do you want to put it first? So do a single click on this face here, so click. And it's trying to taper from there all the way in. But then also from this point here, it now has to taper from there to kind of smooth out that line. So we end up with just kind of like this like very smoothed out little nub. But to fix it, we just have to add in more geometry so that it doesn't start the smooth so much further up. So to do that, we need another loop cut, which you might remember the hotkey, or you can find it in the menu, Edge, Loop Cut, and Slide, but it is Control R. So Control R, when you're in this mode, where do you want to put it first? So do a single click on this face here, so click, and then it's now saying where do you want to slide it to. So I'm going to slide one to the bottom, like so, and then I need another one right above it, So I did a click there to confirm it. So I'm going to hit Control R, and now I'm placing it on the exact same place, and I'm just going to pull it up. And there we go. And now you can see it's much tighter at the bottom there, and it looks good. And if you really wanted to clean up this bottom base there, you can see we kind of got that like starfishy pattern happening. You could do the same thing we did before, which is select that face there and then do an inset. It's not really that essential. No one's really going to notice it, but you might, and maybe you want to clean it up. So yeah, but that's pretty good. That's great. That's a good start to the mug. It looks good. Awesome. Well done. Now it's time for the challenge of making this handle. So you can see it starts about here and then obviously extrudes around and goes back into itself and is joined here. So how do we do this? So basically whenever there is a join, and you can see there's like, you know, like a nice like bevel edge there kind of thing, it has to physically be part of the geometry of this. You can't just have it like existing out in space, because then it won't appear to be joined together. So essentially we have to find somewhere on this mesh to start the handle from. And that point is actually here, right here, which is why I've modeled it this way. Right here is where I'm going to extrude out. Now, before I show you how to extrude it, I first of all want to show you, I'm going to do something and it's going to mess it up. And I'm going to then show you why we need to do something else first before we start extruding. So if I was to extrude this out, we could do the whole handle here, get it back there, make it look perfect, and then later on look at our mug and go, oh no, what is going on? The reason this happens is because of, you might remember, the solidify modifier, which these modifiers, they're not part of the mesh, right? It's happening after the fact. So it's adding a thickness to any mesh that we have here, and it's now adding a thickness to the actual handle itself. So how do we fix that? We fix that by making this go from a modifier to real, like actually bake it into the mesh so that it's actually real geometry. And the way you do that is, first of all, let me just undo all of those, Control Z, of course. The way you do it is by going to the modifier, and then in the little drop down in the top there, right next to that little camera icon, there is an apply. So when you click that, it's disappeared. And now when you go into edit mode though, you can see all that geometry that wasn't there before is now actually part of it. And you can see it if you turn off the subsurf modifier. So I can now make changes to the inner part of my model there without it affecting the rest of it. So it's actual real mesh that we can manipulate. Obviously the downside is it's no longer non-destructive, so that slider that we had for changing the thickness of the mug, we no longer have the slider. It would just mean if we wanted to change the thickness of the mug, we would have to like do it ourselves, like selecting all that stuff and doing it, but that's fine. You have to break the workflow eventually to add in customization, but there you go. So anyways, now that I've got this, now when I select this face here, I can start to do the extrusion. So Importantly, make sure you're selecting the right face. If you were to select this one by mistake and then start trying to do your handle and then like twist it around, it would start to get screwed up very, very quickly. So make sure that you've got this red line that's like intersecting your mug there, that it is, yeah, like it's that one. It's like bang on to the middle. And you can actually check if you go into top view mode, it should be directly in the middle of the mug there. Okay, so with that, that's selected, I'm going to go into front view mode with numpad 1, or hitting that little green thing. And then I'm going to hit, again, the hotkey that we use for extrusion is E to extrude out. Now, when you do that, it's using the normals, the hidden, it's like the hidden direction of each of the faces that are on your mesh, okay? So it's kind of extruding it out like that. For most of you watching this, the extrusion there worked perfectly. But every now and then you go to extrude something and it doesn't work, and it's because there's something wrong with the normals of the face that you tried to extrude from. Basically, it would just mean you would have to clear the normals first. So basically you would select the face, then hit Shift N, and it would clear normals. I've got, by the way, throughout this tutorial, that you're going to run into a lot of problems that I might not be able to explain to you. So I've actually created a troubleshooting guide called the Unstuck Yourself Guide. So the link for that is below as well. But this is just like a database of all the problems you might run into whilst you're doing this tutorial, because we noticed on the Blender Guru Discord, link for that is below as well, where you can ask questions and share your renders and stuff. But a lot of people are asking the same questions. So we put together this like FAQ troubleshooting guide, and please make use of that. So there'll probably be, when you're modeling things, people will run into issues. So just have a look at that if you run into an issue first. Anyways, sorry to really painfully slowly do this, but we've extruded out a little bit. Now I'm going to move this up. So just grabbing, so G to grab, I'm going to move up. And I might actually now, I'm going to tab out so that I can select my image. So I'm in object mode, and I'm actually just going to move this over. So G and then X, move it over to be about there. Okay. And that'll just enable me to kind of see relative to the mug where it should go. Like, what is the shape? I could do it by eye, but yeah, I figure might as well just, it's right there. Might as well just grab it and pull it over. So I need to position this about here, but you can see it's kind of getting like skewed, right? And that is because it's obviously coming in at like this slanted angle. So with that face selected, I need to rotate it. So I'm going to hit R to rotate, like so. Okay, so like that. All right, and I might, just trying to think. All right, I definitely need a loop cut, because obviously that bit that's coming out looking like a nub on our mug there. So I'm going to hit Control R to create a loop cut, and I'm going to pull it down just so that I can see it's like where it should join, basically at the base there. All right, great. And now face select mode, select that face again. And now we just have to keep extruding around. But what I want to do is I want to scale, just make the handle look a little bit thinner. So I'm going to select this top edge here, and I'm going to double tap G just so that I can slide it downwards a little bit to just make it a little bit thinner, because that handle obviously doesn't look as fat as what we had there. So, all right, so face select mode now, and now I'm going to start to extrude. So another extrusion, G to reposition, R to rotate it. And I just want to rotate it so that it kind of follows the contours of this. So I'm going to be rotating it like this kind of angle as we go around. So now E to do another extrusion, click, G, click, R. Now, by the way, there is another way to extrude, which is actually kind of perfect for this. But if you hold down Control and then right click, it will not only extrude, but it will also rotate the faces so that they align. And it can be a little helpful, a bit more easier than doing this like E, G, R, S, G, R, like, so just holding down Control and then right click will just place these little points and will rotate them so that you don't have to do all that rotation yourself. It really only works for these kind of appendages like this, but might as well use it because it's a very handy way to do it. Okay, cool. So now the tricky bit. It's not really that tricky. It's relatively easy to solve, but it's a conundrum, right? Like, how do we make this mesh with the rest of the mesh? And you do that by, like, the wrong way to do this would be to just like kind of like smush them together, right? And this is kind of like early 3D stuff. Like, a lot of stuff was like this. They just kind of mashed stuff and intersected it together. But then you don't get that edge there where it like catches the light. And the only way to really get that is to actually physically like join this mesh together. So this face here has to be connected to this face somehow. And the easiest way in this case to do is to, first of all, we can see that this line here is like cutting into the middle of this this cup here, right? So we really need to just add a line that goes around there to make this area here like one face to match this handle. So I'm going to add that line by hitting Control R, loop cut, click, and then I'm going to slide it up to be, you know, roughly about there. That's fine. And then now, because I've intersected it, that went too far. So I'm holding down Z. Now this is a way of quickly changing the mode that you're viewing something in. And we'll get to these other two once we get to materials, rendering and stuff. But for now, if you just swap to wireframe mode, this will show you through the mesh. There is another way to see through a mesh, and that is to, at the top there, that little X-ray or Alt-Z is a hotkey for it. But that's another way to do it. But yeah, that you can see that's wireframe, and then hang on a second. Nope, that's X-ray. This is wireframe. But yeah, they're pretty similar. Anyways, so I'm going to select my face here, and I'm just going to pull it out, just so that I can just grab it basically. And now I can go back to my solid view as before. Okay, so I touched on this briefly before, but like a mesh is made up of these individual points, right? This is what you're seeing when you're in vertice mode, these individual points. And each of those points, when you have 4 together, 3 or more actually, you can create a face. And so that's what that is. So essentially, I need to create a new face for this section right here. So let's do that now. So I'm going to select those two, and I've just selected them by holding down Shift like this, and then I'm just going to hit F. F for face. Okay, and then I can do the same on this side, like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the top. And then I'm going to do the same underneath. Okay. Like that. And then I'm going to, okay, Shift. Yeah, so together, 3 or more actually, you can create a face. And so that's what that is. So essentially, I need to create a new face for this section right here. So let's do that now. So I'm going to select those two, and I've just selected them by holding down Shift like this, and then I'm just going to hit F. F for face. Okay, and then I can do the same on this side, like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the top, and then I'm going to do the same underneath. Okay. All right, so I've done it. And I did it deliberately this way because I need to show you the reason for this issue here. So we've got, yeah, we've got the faces, so they should be going smoothly across here. But because of the way meshes work and the way they try to, the way smooth shading works is, it does it based on like a continuous flow of faces. And you will have noticed that when we created this, there was actually a face that is inside here before we joined it, okay? Which and I'll show you if we go into here, this area here, you should see there is a face that is, they should same and face action This is what you're seeing when you're in vertice mode, these individual points. And each of those points, when you have 4 together, 3 or more actually, you can create a face. And so that's what that is. So essentially, I need to create a new face for this section right here. So let's do that now. So I'm going to select those two, and I've just selected them by holding down Shift like this, and then I'm just going to hit F. F for face. Okay, and then I can do the same on this side, like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the top. And then I'm going to do the same underneath. Okay. All right. So I've done it, and I did it deliberately this way because I need to show you the reason for this issue here. So we've got, we've got the faces, so they should be going smoothly across here. But because of the way meshes work and the way they try to, the way smooth shading works is, it does it based on like a continuous flow of faces. And you will have noticed that when we created this, there was actually a face that is inside here before we joined it, okay? And I'll show you if we go into here. This area here, you should see there is a face that is right here. So because that exists, the smooth shader doesn't actually know that it's supposed to continue on because there's a face that goes down. So it's now kind of mixed. It doesn't know, like it has to create a smooth shading here, but then also one on the top there. And so it's done this weird hybrid thing where it's like, it's tried to do it, but there's clearly something going on underneath. So what we need to do is just delete that face. So again, in face select mode, you select that inner face there. And by the way, when you're working in 3D, this is a really common thing beginners do, is they select the wrong face. So you can see how quickly that, like, they're right next to each other, that point there, right? But selecting one or the other, it just happens all the time. So a thing that a lot of 3D artists do is when they've selected something, before they delete it, you just do a quick orbit around, and that'll just like break the perspective and just to verify that that is the actual one I mean to select. Okay, then I'm gonna hit X and I'm gonna say faces. Okay, but it's not just that one, right? Like that, that should be fixed soon, but anyway, I'll show you how. And then there's one on the inside here as well, okay? Because when we joined it, there was a face here and there was a face over there. So I'm now gonna delete that face by hitting X and then say faces. Okay, now that's done. This should be correct, but the reason it's not is one, I think if I need to right click and say shade smooth, and that has fixed it. What can happen sometimes is when you've fixed up some geometry, you might need to recalculate the normals, and again, to bring up the normals, there's a secret hidden line that every face on your object has, and they're always pointing outward like that. But when you've created new mesh and you've kind of fixed things or whatnot, you can end up with one of these lines that goes the wrong direction. And I'll show you that actually, if I just do this. That's what it might look like. You get this weird like black shading artifacts that's very ugly. So to fix that, you select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift N and that will recalculate it. Always think in something it's a little bit here. So we've got we've got the faces, so they should be going just so that I can just grab it basically, and now I can go back to my solid view as before. Okay, so I touched on this briefly before, but like a mesh is made up of these individual points, right? This is what you're seeing when you're in vertice mode, these individual points. And each of those points, when you have 4 together, 3 or more actually, you can create a face. And so that's what that is. So essentially, I need to create a new face for this section right here. So let's do that now. So I'm going to select those two, and I've just selected them by holding down Shift like this, and then I'm just going to hit F. F for face. Okay, and then I can do the same on this side, like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the top. And then I'm going to do the same underneath. Okay. All right. So I've done it, and I did it deliberately this way because I need to show you the reason for this issue here. So we've got we've got the faces, so they should be going smoothly across here. But because of the way meshes work and the way they try to the way smooth shading works is it does it based on like a continuous flow of faces. And you will have noticed that when we created this, there was actually a face that is inside here before we joined it, okay? And I'll show you if we go into here. This area here, you should see there is a face that is right here. So because that exists, the smooth shader doesn't actually know that it's supposed to continue on because there's a face that goes down. So it's now kind of mixed. It doesn't know, like it has to create a smooth shading here, but then also one on the top there. And so it's done this weird hybrid thing where it's like it's tried to do it, but there's clearly something going on underneath. So what we need to do is just delete that face. So again, in face select mode, you select that inner face there. And by the way, when you're working in 3D, this is a really common thing beginners do, is they select the wrong face. So you can see how quickly that, like, they're right next to each other, that point there, right? But selecting one or the other, it just happens all the time. So a thing that a lot of 3D artists do is when they've selected something, before they delete it, you just do a quick orbit around, and that'll just like break the perspective and just to verify that that is the actual one I mean to select. Okay. Then I'm going to hit X and I'm going to say faces. Okay. But it's not just that one, right? Like that. I'm actually that should be fixed soon, but anyway, I'll show you how. And then there's one on the inside here as well. Okay. Because when we joined it, there was a face here and there was a face over there. So I'm now going to delete that face by hitting X and then say faces. Okay. Now that's done. This should be correct. But the reason it's not is one, I think if I need to right click and say shade smooth, and that has fixed it. What can happen sometimes is when you've fixed up some geometry, you might need to recalculate the normals, and again, to bring up the normals, there's a secret hidden line that every face on your object has, and they're always pointing. This should be correct. But the reason it's not is one, I think if I need to right click and say shade smooth, and that has fixed it. What can happen sometimes is when you've and then say faces. Okay, now that's done. This should be correct. But the reason it's not is one, I think if I need to right click and say shade smooth, and that has fixed it. What can happen sometimes is when you've fixed up some geometry, you might need to recalculate the normals, and again, to bring up the normals, there's a secret hidden line that every face on your object has, and they're always pointing outward. like that. But when you've created new mesh and you've kind of fixed things or whatnot, you can end up with one of these lines that goes the wrong direction. And I'll show you that actually, if I just do this. That's what it might look like. You get this weird like black shading artifacts that's very ugly. So to fix that, you select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift N and that will recalculate. This and I'll fix always pointers of this should be correct. But the reason it's not is one, I think if I need to right click and say shade smooth, and that has fixed it. What can happen sometimes is when you've fixed up some geometry, you might need to recalculate the normals, like and again, to bring up the normals, there's a secret hidden line that every face on your object has, and they're always pointing outward like that. But when you've created new mesh and you've kind of fixed things or whatnot, you can end up with one of these lines that goes the wrong direction. And I'll show you that actually, if I just do this. That's what it might look like. You get this weird like black shading artifacts that's very ugly. So to fix that, you select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift N and that will recalculate it. Black shading artifacts that's very ugly. So to fix that, you select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift that's very ugly. So to fix that, you select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift N and that will recalculate. You select your entire mesh and then you hit Shift N and that will recalculate it. And now you can see the smooth shading is correct. And just to show you quickly as well, the way I did it just then, where we like created it and then we deleted the faces, don't do this. I'm just going to show you like actually what you would do, because it's not this tedious normally. If you had this problem, you would actually select this face and this face first. You delete them ahead of time, and then actually, and there's a faster way to have created this join here. You can select that entire edge loop with Alt, then Shift Alt, select that, and now I could right click and say Bridge Edge Loops, which you only can do if you've got the exact same number of vertices on one side as the other. But I wanted to show you physically creating those points with vertices, because that is a really common way to model, to join things together. You select the 4 vertices, you create a new face. Anyways, look at that. We've got what looks like a handle coming out of the mug. Now, if we look at our reference here, we've got it pretty close, but you can see that there's like, it's sharp, right? There's clearly like a crease here and a crease here. And we can do that just by adding in more loop cuts. So I'm going to add in, well, I guess there's 2 ways to do it. One, I can actually just select this edge here. So holding down Alt, just select that and then double tap G and I can bring that in. But when I do that, this area becomes a little bit straight. Maybe not what I wanted. Let's have a look at front mode. Yeah, I might want a little bit more detail there, in which case I would add a loop cut. But, you know, it's really up to you. You might be able to just, you know, move this around and just kind of shape it. Like, look, we're learning Blender. That's really the goal of this. It's not necessarily to make a physically accurate mug. I don't want to overcomplicate things and make things feel like you have to do everything perfectly, but I also don't want to end up with like a trash result and then everyone be like, oh, we did all that effort and now it looks garbage. But, you know, you could spend a lot of effort. You know, you could even try and get, like, if you look at, you know, there would be probably like a little line here, like the kind of, you know what I mean? Like on the inner part of the thing, you could try and create that. You could really add a lot of detail. The only thing I'm really going to fix is right here where it's pinching. I'm just going to select that edge there and I'm going to double tap G and I'm just going to slide it up. So there's just a little less pinching. And then this part here, like you can see the shape of this face is being very distorted, right? You generally want to keep things as close to a squarish shape as possible, generally. And so I'm just going to select this edge at the bottom there, double tap G, and I'm just going to pull it out just to relieve a little bit of the tension there. And I mean, you can, yeah, there's like a tighter line there, but this will do. This is enough to be perceived as a coffee mug. Now, if you want to just move ahead with the tutorial and get on to the next part, which is going to be on materials and lighting, you can do that. However, if you want a little bit of a challenge, like a little bit of a homework, where you can try to use some skills but by yourself, you will see, looking at the photo here, that we also have a saucer, a little tiny plate for our mug. Now, I didn't include that in my final image. I just had the coffee mug just sitting on the table. But this is a great, very small thing that you could try to model by yourself using the skills that you've just learned, to create something new. So how would you go about adding that saucer? You could have a try at it. It's a completely separate object, obviously, to your mug here. So even if you screw it up, worst case scenario is you just delete it, and then you'll still end up with something that to create something new. So how would you go about adding that saucer? You could have a try at it. It's a completely separate object, obviously, to your mug here. So even if you screw it up, worst case scenario is you just delete it, and then you'll still end up with something that I actually had for my final result, which was a mug without a saucer. But if you want to add that in, it'll be a way to kind of take some of the lessons that you've picked up already, and then try to remember them and the different steps and the things required to create it. Because whilst you've just created something now, it's the best time to try to recall that memory, so that in the future, maybe in a few days or a few weeks from now, when you try to do something yourself, it'll be a lot more readily available to recall that information. So if you want to have a go at doing that, feel free to. Otherwise, join me in the next part. Welcome back. In this part, we are going to be making the icing. Yeah.
And you don't seem to understand. Ashamed you seemed an honest man. And all the fears you hold so dear will turn to whisper in your ear. And you know what you said might hurt you, and you know that it means so much. don't seem to understand. Ashamed you seemed an honest man. I know the fears you hold so dear will turn to whisper in your ear. And you know what they say might hurt you, and you know that it means so much.
Yes, the exciting icing for our donut. But first, we do have quite a lot of objects going on in our scene. We've got a camera, lamp, we've got an object, an image and stuff. We should try to organize some things. And some of you might have noticed in the top right-hand corner, you've got a list of all of your objects, right? This is called your outliner. And it is like a spreadsheet version of all the objects that are in your scene. And we're going to use it later on to like organize, like create collections, so it's like easier to see and organize things. But the first thing we need to do is just add names to things that make sense. So for example, our mug here is currently called Cylinder. So if we had a big scene with lots of objects going on, we can't find it. So it's a good habit to name your objects. So there's a number of different ways you could name something. One is you can just double click it in the outliner, right? You can see now I can type in a name like mug. You can also, in your 3D viewport, you can hit F2, which is the same hotkey in like Windows, I don't know, maybe Mac, but for renaming. And then I can just type in a name like donut. And you can also do that in the outliner as well. You can just hit F2 and that'll also do the renaming. So there we go. So now we've got names that actually make sense. I don't actually need the image anymore, even though I just renamed it. So I'm just going to delete that. All right, so we've now just got a camera, we've got a donut, a light, and a mug. Great. So let's make that icing. I'm going to move my mug out of the way. So G and then X, and I'm just going to throw it to the side so we don't see it anymore. And let's focus on our donut. So we want to make some icing. And when it comes to something as challenging as icing, and really anything, there's so many different ways to make things in 3D, and every single method has a pro and a con. So for example, there is a fluid simulator in Blender. It's not very good, but it exists, and it is a way you could create icing. You could actually like create an object and then simulate it falling and splatting over it. The reason we're not going to do that though is that one, it's incredibly complicated. There's so many things that can go wrong with the simulation. Blender Simulator is not very good. And then also you don't have any control over the final result. You have to keep rebaking things. It's horrible. But there is another way, and that is to just do it by hand. And at first that seems slower, but you have much more control over it, and it's actually pretty easy to do. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's also a great way to introduce some more tools and things and get you familiar with different areas of Blender. So icing follows the shape of the thing that it's on. So really icing is basically the shape that we've got. It's basically half of this donut. So if we got half the donut, we're halfway there. Then we just need to add some variation to it to make it look like icing. So what I'm going to do is duplicate my donut. So Shift D, that is how you duplicate. You can also just go Object and then say Duplicate Objects there, Shift D. And when you do this, you are in the duplicated state, and it's saying now where do you want to place that thing. And we don't want to place it anywhere. We want to leave it exactly where it was. And so I'm going to hit Escape. Now, when you do that, it hasn't canceled the duplication, because you can see at the top there, we've now got donut and then donut 0.001. So there is two objects still there. They're just exactly in the exact same spot fighting for space. Something you actually never want to have is two objects sharing the exact same space, because then when a camera moves or something happens in an animation, you see like flickering. Really, really bad. Anyways, I'm going to double click that. I'm going to call it icing just so that I can quickly tell the two apart. And I want to delete the bottom half of my donut. So I'm going to go into front view mode like that. And I need to go into edit mode next. And I want to select the bottom half of my donut. This is face select. Currently, let's go vertice select. Okay. And if I was to click and then just drag over the bottom half of my donut, it would appear as though as we have got half the donut. However, and this is an area of Blender that is not clear until you run into problems, but if I was to change my orbit, you can see it hasn't actually selected half the donut. It's only selected what it could see from that view. So you have to turn on toggle X-ray first or go into wireframe mode. Yeah, you have to turn that on first, then do your selection, and now it will actually select all the way through an object to the other side as well. By the way, if you find that you can't do this drag selection that I've got, if you've got instead a circle over your cursor, like what I have here, what that means is you have tapped the W key by mistake, which will cycle through in the top little side of your screen there, different selection modes. I wish it was not W. That's one of my complaints I've made to the Blender team. W is so close to the other keys you need on your keyboard. So many people hit this, they hit the wrong key, and then they're in this thing, and then like nothing works. So like, yeah, you want to be in this mode most of the time. But yeah, you can change to these other modes if you wanted to, you know, do a special selection or something as well. But anyways, that is how to fix that. And also just to call it out as well, we're going to be doing some like stuff with this icing that's going to maybe mess some things up and you might run into some issues. I've got to call it out again. I've got an Unstuck Yourself guide, troubleshooting guide for just this tutorial. It is free. Just click the link below and it'll take you there. Because I want you guys to be able to get through this tutorial, but there's so many little things that you could experience in this. So we're going to add it to that guide to try and help you. And if you can't find the answer to your problem in there, hit up the Discord. The link for that is also in it. So I'll link to my website and all the links will be there. So check that out if you run into issues. All right, so I've got the bottom half of my donut. We have to delete it. So I'm going to hit X. When you do this, it's saying which part of it you want to delete. Now, this is one of those cases where it actually matters like which one of these you select, because if you were to select vertices, because it would appear as though that's what you need to delete. But if you did that, you'll notice you've got now less than half, because along with the vertices selected is that final line that is cut through the middle there. So I don't want to delete that final line. I want to delete the other stuff. So in my options here, I've got an option for faces, which if we try that, you can see is the solution, because when you are deleting the faces, you're only deleting what is a whole face. But these individual points here don't make up a whole face. This part does, so that's left behind. But all the other stuff was deleted. So anyways, we should now have half of a donut. So I'm going to turn off toggle X-ray now so I can see it. And if we clicked off, you'll see that it actually just looks exactly like a donut, because again, they're sharing the exact same space. I do know it's there if I select it in the little outliner there, but it's completely invisible. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add some thickness to this icing. And this is something you should know how to do. You should know it. If you don't know it, you've not been paying attention. But if you go to your modifiers, there's a modifier, another clue. It is, of course, the solidify modifier, which adds thickness to any face. So now that we've added that, you think something's broken, it's not working. It is working, it's just that by default, the solidify will add thickness inside. So if you change this offset here to be the inverted, which is 1, it will now add the thickness the other way, which is what we need. Okay, so that's great. But of course, it doesn't look very good. There's a quote which I always repeat. Imperfection is the digital perfection, because the reason this looks fake, it's just perfectly straight. There's no way to get a laser cut icing across a donut like this unless you're using 3D software. So we need to add randomness to this edge here in order for it to look realistic to our eye. So I need to go into edit mode. And when we do that, we can't see the mesh because we've got our solidifier blocking our view. So I'm going to click this disable in viewport just to hide it so that I can see it. So when I turn it back on, I know it's there, but just while I'm editing it, in order to see it, I need to be able to have it turned off. So to add randomness, what I could do is I could come in here and I could select one point like this. I could hit G and I could move it down, okay? Then I could get the point next to it and I could move this one down and then this one, and I could do this and do this, and we could put ourselves to sleep trying to make this donut look good, and it would take forever. But thankfully in 3D, there are tools for everything to make your life easier. And so one such tool is at the top here, your proportional editing tool. What this does is now when I hit G, it'll move everything at once. What it will do is it will move everything with a fall off area around it. The reason it's moving the entire mesh with it is that the fall off is so big that it's actually outside of our view at the moment. This was actually something I called out in my usability talk at the Blender conference last year. We could do better than this, but basically if you zoom way out, you will see there is a circle around it, and that's how big it is. So what we need to do is, whilst we're in this move state, is we need to reduce that, and you do that by scrolling down. Scroll down, 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 down. Oh no, that was the wrong direction. Scroll up, sorry, scroll up, not down, and that will make it smaller. So scroll, you will see there is a circle around it, and that's how big it is. So what we need to do is, whilst we're in this move state, is we need to reduce that, and you do that by scrolling down. Scroll. Scroll down, 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 down. Reduce this. So what we need to do is, whilst we're in this move state, is we need to reduce that, and you do that by scrolling down. Scroll down, 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 down. Oh no, that was the wrong direction. Scroll up, sorry, scroll up.
Race against the break of dawn, afraid to see me when the lights are on. A silence that
Not down, and that will make it smaller. So scroll up to make it smaller, scroll down to make it bigger. I just completely brain farted. If you don't have a scroll wheel, by the way, and this is another thing to call out, when you're in a move state like we are right now, you can see along the bottom of our screen, you've got a list, and that only appeared there when you're in that state. When I turn it off, all those options are gone. But whilst I'm in this state, there's a bunch of options there. And the keyboard shortcut is actually right there, page up and page down. Okay, so that is how we can increase or decrease. So again, if you don't see the circle, you just have to keep holding page down or scrolling up until it goes down to something that you can see, basically. Anyways, now that we are in that state, I'm gonna hit Z, okay, to grab, So whilst I'm doing, I don't want to just like freehand do it, because if I pull it down like this, watch what happens. If I do it on the edge here like this, it appears as though it's pulling it straight down, right? And I do this and this. But actually, if you looked at it, these would be slightly skewed a little bit. Just because of, like, we're working in 3D. We're looking at things from a different perspective. Sometimes things appear to be going down, but they're actually at like a slight angle. So it helps to, when you're moving something, to think of which axis it's going on. So I want it to go straight down. So G and then Z, and now I'm gonna pull it down. Okay, that was a lot of work just to do this one little bit, I'm sorry. All right, okay, so we've pulled it down. Excellent. I'll do a little bit more as well. I'll just do a little bit here. I'll do a little bit here. You can like play with the the amount, the fall off. Like so. You know, you can play with it. All right, cool. Now if we turn on our solidify modifier, we've got the thickness back, and you can see we've got some variation to the donut there. So let's continue on here. So let's pull this like so. I don't want to go too far because we're going to add some dribbles soon. Dribbles sounds gross, but you know, the little runoff droplets that's going to go down the donut like so. Okay, that is pretty good. Now you can see it's like partly like intersecting it, and that's obviously because we've got proportional editing, so it's actually kind of moving some of these ones that are up top and pulling it down as well. It's fine with the solidify modifier, but we're actually going to end up fixing it when we do the dribble anyway, because I'm going to introduce another modifier that's going to fix this. But anyways, let's do this. Let's do the dribble part. So I'm going to look for an area, yeah, like let's go, yeah, and here where this bit's like running down, and I'm going to anyway, because I'm going to introduce another modifier that's going to fix this. But anyways, let's do this. Let's do the dribble part. So I'm going to look for an area, yeah, like let's go, yeah, and here where this bit's like running down, and I'm going to I want to make this like a dribble that goes down the donut here. And currently I can't really continue to pull this. Like I could like get like a sharp point like that, but that does not look very good, right? We need more geometry essentially. So you might remember the hotkey. If we want to extrude something, it is E. But I can't just extrude one point like that, okay? Because there's no face there. There's nothing that's actually going to be rendered if I just pull one point down. So I need to select 2 points, okay? So 2 points like this. If I hit E and then Z and then pull down and then release, and then if I bring back my solidify modifier, you can see we've got more geometry. Doesn't look very good though. So let's add in another modifier, the same one that we used on the mug as well. It's the subdivision surface modifier. As I said, use these all the time. Use it for most objects, probably have a subdivision modifier because it's so useful. But one of the things it's good for is it, like, besides adding detail, it like smooths things out for us. So that little hard little block that we had there has now turned into a smoothed droplet looking shape, which is exactly what we want. But look, dun, 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 it has separated from the donut. Now in previous tutorials, I actually did like a thing that showed you how to like use this but make it like snap onto the donut, and it got all complicated. Everyone screwed up their mesh at this point. You can do this by hand as well. You can like come in here and like try to pull this in piece by piece, but it's actually not necessary because there is a modifier that will just do it for you. So if you go to your add modifier stack and then go to deform, and then you're looking for the one called shrink wrap. And by the way, again, if you can't find it, just go up to here, type in shrink wrap, and you'll also find it there. So shrink wrap, What this is going to do is going to shrink it onto a mesh, but you have to define the mesh first in order to see it, because if you don't, it just has no effect. Absolutely, that's what the red is showing you. It's not doing anything. So your target, yeah, you can actually like select it from the drop down, or what most people do, you click the little eyedropper and then you select the object. Bam. All right, now it's working, and now we've got some serious Z fighting where the faces are overlapping, and this is horrible. You never want this. All right, so you remember when I was talking about the modifier, that it works top to bottom. So essentially what we've done is we've gone add thickness, then add detail, and then shrink wrap all of that thickness onto the donut itself. So what we need to do is change the order of this and not go halfway, because that also won't do anything. We need to go all the way to the top so that the shrink wrap is happening first. So it's snapping it onto the mesh, then it's adding the solidify modifier, then underneath that, it's adding the subsurf modifier. And we can actually increase this, make it a level 2 for the viewport. And you can see it just adds a little bit extra detail there, okay? And you can go even higher, of course, but you know, you will get, eventually it'll just get so slow for your computer and there's not really going to be any point, but you can just go to level 2 for now. Okay, so to quickly show you as well what the shrink wrap is actually doing, because it's not that clear. But yeah, this is where that little piece is overhanging, and then it's essentially looking for the nearest point to find this mesh underneath it, and then it is just snapping it to that point. So it's pretty good. Like I can drag this like pretty far down, like, but there is an extent so I'm just doing another extrusion on this point. So like as I pull it down, you can see it kind of loses it. There's a point where it just won't find the mesh anymore. So there's a point like at which you should start to pull things into the mesh. It's not magic. It's not going to just magically find it. So if I just pull it all the way out, there's no way it's going to be able to find it. So there is a limit, but you can see it does make our job a lot easier, because I can pull it down and I can start to make you know, some big dribbles along my mesh here, and I don't have to really worry that much about the placement, because it's just going to automatically snap itself to the donut. I just have to make sure that the dribbles are straight. And if you look at reference, which you should be doing, I'll put some reference on the link below on my website, so you can have a look and just kind of go through it. But yeah, usually when like droplets form, they kind of like, the gravity kind of like builds at a point, and it kind of like gets sucked from the top, and so you end up with like this thin bit in the middle, and then this like globule, which is a crazy word, at the bottom there. But essentially it just means the piece at the bottom, I'm just gonna make it a little bit thicker than the pieces above it. Okay, so that's one, but we should do more. So I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna add more. And just repeat the same thing. Just do an extrusion on these little points there and just kind of drag it down. So let's do that. Because yeah, I remember the first donut that I ever made. Oh, way back in the day, making the first donut. And I really, like, I did one little dribble going down it. And then I always wanted to frame the camera so that it was looking at that, because that was the most interesting part of the donut. And then I learned, like, just exaggerate, just add little dribbles everywhere. That is a big part of being an artist, is you look at reality and then you find the bits that are actually pleasing and then you exaggerate it. And that's what I'm doing. So, you know, donuts typically don't have this many dribbles, but it's very pleasing. It just makes it look very like gooey and like, there's so much icing. And you can see, by the way, I'm not doing the same shape also everywhere. So this is like a half one, right? And I'm kind of looking for like where I can add some different shapes. Why is that? There's a gap there. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I was recording for this tutorial, and I recorded something and then I like reverted it. But I've now got a giant face here where there should be not a giant face there. So what do? You've accidentally got this thing. There is And this is, you obviously don't have to do this because this is not your problem. But I'm just going to use the knife tool, which is a way to do an incision on a mesh and just add more geometry like freehand. So I've just fixed that little problem that I had there, but you hopefully should not have that problem. Yeah, I'm going to just pull this down. I'm going to turn on proportional editing. I'm going to add a little bit that's going down, and let's select these two, turn off proportional. Let's add another little bit that's going right here. Add a little bit of variance, and let's add another big one right here. Pull this one down. But this is the fun part, you know? I mean, aside from the finicky, like, going, like, sideways, looking at where it appears, and then straightening it, but you get to kind of, like, shape things and just, like, with your eye, just play with it. It's actually one of the cool things of 3D. It's also why a lot of people get into 3D, is they want to do art, but whenever they pick up a pencil, they just can't get the lines where they want it. And the great thing about 3D is that you've got points, and you can move those points after the fact. You're not drawing freehand. So there's no case where you like screw up a line and you have to like rub it out and try again. Like you just grab a point and just kind of like move it around, like I'm doing right now. So that's one of the joys of 3D. I'm just doing filler talk, if you can't tell. Just grab a few pieces, move them all down together, why not? There we go. That's kind of interesting. I might just take this one at the bottom there off, and I'll just maybe pull these out, just so we've got more variance that goes all the way around it. But play with it as much as you want. You know, you can pause this and, you know, play with it, but I'm just trying to make it look generally appealing. Now, one way to improve this, you'll notice that the icing is separating from it, right? It's going up right there. And again, that's because of how subsurf modifiers work. There's a point here and there's a point here. So it has to make this really rounded shape. But real liquid, when it is in this state, when it's clinging to an object, this part here, as it hits it, that part will be like solid, right? And then the rest of it, like this part is round, but then this part is like hugging the actual surface. So thankfully, we can do that. There is a setting in the solidifier setting options, which I might have to move. There we go, so we can see it. Underneath edge data, there is an option here for a crease. Okay, so what a crease is doing, we didn't really talk about it with the mug, but it's essentially on an edge, it's creasing it and saying like, instead of like doing that huge rounded thing, just kind of tighten it on that edge. Very similar to adding the geometry like what we did on the mug, but this is a way to do it without adding extra geometry. It does kind of add a little bit of stretching, but it's not really that noticeable on something like this. But that is very, very nice. Very solid. It's hugging it and it looks very pleasing. Excellent. Now we could as well, I didn't actually do this for my final one because I forgot, but I realized, but it's not really that noticeable on something like this. But that is very, very nice. Very solid. It's hugging it and it looks very pleasing. Excellent. Now we could as well, I didn't actually do this for my final one because I forgot, but I realized after, I was like, oh yeah, I guess like the part that's on the inside of the donut, yeah, I forgot to do that. But yeah, you can also like do the exact same thing, just playing with it. If you find like it's kind of hard to like look at it inside the donut, if you just select the middle row, so if you just hold down Alt and then select on that middle row, you can use the same focus button, so numpad period or tilde and then view, and then that will just lock it on to those selected vertices. So that focus key that I mentioned, it works on in edit mode as well, which is good. So yeah, I can just pull these down like this and just, you know, the camera's not really gonna notice it. You just wanna make sure that it's, you know, not perfectly straight like mine was in the final render. It doesn't really, like, who's gonna notice, you know, who's going to tell, really? annoying people are going to point it out. The inside part's too straight. All right. So that's pretty good. Actually, something I might do, because I noticed like looking from the top, because this is where the camera is going to be, like we're not really able to see much donut. Like the icing is a little bit too far down. So I'm just going to grab some of these points here using proportional editing. I'm just going to pull them up to just expose a little bit more of the underlying donut, which is definitely going to make the donut look a little bit more handmade, you know, because like obviously probably a professional donut from Krispy Kreme or something doesn't have this much variance in it, but it's okay. It does kind of help it give it a, realistic kind of look. Now, there's one thing that would really improve the look of this icing, and that is thickness variation. Because if you go around it, you'll see that the exact, the distance from here to here is the exact same thing as like, what it would be over here to here. And that's just not the case. We've got like icing that is dribbling down. These little droplets are kind of like breaking away. And what happens when those droplets break and then they kind of stop? They build up, right? So we should actually see these kind of like swell a little bit. They should be a little bit rounder at the heads of each of these points. Also along the edges here. Every little edge here should be a little bit more inflated than the rest of it. And although that sounds like nothing, when you do it, when you actually add this little detail, it really does improve the realism. So we can't do that because all we've got is these little points here, okay? So just like what we did with the mug, there comes a time where you need to break the non-destructive workflow and apply your modifiers. So this shrink wrap here, by the way, when you apply something, you have to apply it in like top to bottom. So even really, although we only want to apply the solidify, that's the main one we want to do. We have to first of all apply the shrink wrap because that's the one that is first, and that's the one, like if we applied this one first, we would lose the shrink wrap would have to go after it, and it would just, it would screw it up. So we have to apply the shrink wrap first. So go here and click apply. Okay. Now in edit mode, you can see we've still got those single points, but they're now snapped to the mesh. All right. But it means we no longer have that automatic snapping. So if I was to pull these out, you can see they're now separated from the mesh. So just keep that in mind. We still can't edit the mesh there because we haven't applied the solidify. So I'm going to apply the solidify now. And now we've got these points here. Okay, so now if I wanted to, with just these points, I could pull some of these points out, turning off proportional editing, and I could just pull them out a little bit. And that's better, but we don't have enough detail here. We need more geometry to play with in order to add this extra detail. So we need to apply our subsurf modifier. So I'm going to, on here, I'm going to hit apply. And actually there's a hotkey if you don't want to have to go to the drop down each time. Control A will apply the selected modifier. And now in edit mode, look at this. Now we've got all this extra geometry to play with. So now if I wanted to, I could turn on proportional editing. I could select one point. I could try and get a kind of a shape like this. That would be probably the best way to do it if I was restricted to edit mode. And that'll get me some of the way there. I could, pull individual points out. I could try and do that, but you can see it's very finicky, and it's not the tool to use, because like I said, there are tools for everything in 3D to try to help you to do things better. So go to the top of your screen. We're currently in layout. That's all we've done so far. We're going to swap to sculpting. All right. Now, when you swap to a new one of these views here, it's assuming the default view of Blender, which is like when everything was like 10 meters long or whatever. So our donut is tiny. So we have to focus on the selected object. So I'm just going to hit numpad period. That hasn't worked. Okay, don't worry about that. All right. So instead of in sculpt mode, change to object mode. Then to focus on the selected object. So I'm just going to hit numpad period. That hasn't worked. Okay, don't worry about that. All right. So instead of in sculpt mode, change to object mode. Then hit numpad period or view selected. And then now jump back to sculpt mode. and now we're back to it. For some reason, I thought focus worked in sculpt mode. Yeah, all right. Sometimes you just teach something and then you go, oh, that never worked. What was I talking about? Anyway, okay, in sculpt mode now, and make sure you're looking at the correct one, okay? Not the donut, but the icing itself. If I was to now draw over this, you can see we're drawing into the mesh of the icing. Isn't that cool? All right, so what I want to do is I want to change my brush, and I want to find the one brush which is really going to help us here, and it is this one, the Inflate Deflate brush. Now your brush size here can be controlled by the size at the top, or there is a hotkey, F. And when you hit F, you just choose with your mouse like how big the size needs to be. Okay, so I can pull out. And then now, if I just draw over that little globule there, the end piece, it just adds a little bit of inflation. And so I'm just pulling it around just slightly. I don't want to go too far, but just adding these little inflated points will really help this to look realistic. The other thing is you can actually shape some of the mesh as well. So there's another brush that I use all the time, which is the grab brush. You just essentially just pull mesh like that. So that's another easy way to just kind of move pieces around like so. You can just shape things like this, add a little bit of extra detail if you want. Yep. And all is well. So you can see I'm doing a little bit on the edge here again because all the edges there should have a little bit of buildup of the fluid, because that's where gravity kind of makes it stall and like stop, because it just kind of like runs out of like the tension will be more than the gravity that's pulling it down. You get the idea. Anyways, play with that as much as you like. But of course, we have some homework to finish off this video. So what I want you to make is this hidden object, which is a plate for your donut. So have a look at the shape here that I've got and have a think about how you would go about creating this and try to do it yourself. Just give it a stab. Even if you don't feel confident, you don't feel like you could achieve it, just give it a go. There's a hint. We've got some modifiers on the right here, and I will also show you what the wireframe looks like, because that will probably help some people out as well. Okay, so that's a pretty big hint. But yeah, give it a go. Without any instruction from me, have a stab at that. In the next part, I'll very quickly show you how to create this. If you get completely lost, you can join me in that part, but please have a go at trying to do it yourself. Anyway, go ahead, join me in the next part after you have tried to create this by yourself. Welcome back. How did you go making your plate? Hope you all attempted it. If you didn't or you got stuck, don't worry, because I'm going to show you how to make it right now. So if you had no problems with it, you might want to skip forward. This might be a little boring, but otherwise I'm going to show everyone how I would go about creating the plate. So we need to add a new object to the scene. We can go to the add menu up there, or we can hit Shift A. And then from this list, we want to choose the object which most resembles what we want to create. If you ask me, that would be a circle. Okay, so just like before, the bottom left-hand corner, we can change some options here. The biggest one being radius. It's too big, so I'll drop that into about there. And you will notice that you can see through it, okay? And that is because there is no face there. This is just a string of vertices. And as I touched on briefly earlier, vertices don't show up in your render, faces do. So we need to add a type of face underneath fill. So there's two options, either of them will do. N-gon is just one single face shared amongst the 32, or the triangle fan will mean there's one point in the middle. You can actually see it in this mode. One point in the middle, and then it just creates triangles to that point. I'm gonna go with N-gon because, you know, never failed me for this option. So I'll just use that. Okay. Now we need to add more geometry to this because we need to create some sort of a there's one point in the middle. You can actually see it in this mode. One point in the middle, and then it just creates triangles to that point. I'm going to go with Ngon because, you know, it's never failed me for this option. So I'll just use that. Okay. Now we need to add more geometry to this because we need to create some sort of a lip for the plate. You can't just have a plate. It's always got to have a rim on or else that stuff slides off it, right? So into edit mode by hitting tab, to add some geometry, I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to hit E, okay? And in this state, it's now saying, yeah, where do you want to place it? And it's extruding it along the normal, which is that invisible line that faces out from the face in there. And I'm just going to do a single click right here. Now, before we start scaling and pulling this out, you'll notice that obviously that's intersecting our mesh. We need to delete that face because we don't need it. So I'm going to hit X to delete. And then what type of deletion? Not edges, not vertices, obviously, because that would be, you know, the entire line. I want to delete just the single face on top. And there we go. So now I can reselect that line by holding down Alt and then left clicking on it. And now if I want to create like a lip, which obviously that's intersecting our, I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to hit E, okay? Gone because, you know, never failed me for this option. So I'll just use that. Okay. Now we need to add more geometry to this because we need to create some sort of a lip for the plate. You can't just have a plate. It's always got to have a rim on or else that stuff slides off it, right? So into edit mode by hitting tab, to add some geometry, I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to hit E, okay? And in this state, it's now saying, yeah, where do you want to place it? And it's extruding it along the normal, which is that invisible line that faces out from the face in there. And I'm just going to do a single click right here. Now, before we start scaling and pulling this out, you'll notice that obviously that's intersecting our mesh. mesh, we need to delete that face because we don't need it. So I'm going to hit X to delete. And then what type of deletion? Not edges, not vertices, obviously, because that would be, you know, the entire line. I want to delete just the single face on top. And there we go. So now I can reselect that line by holding down Alt and then left clicking on it. And now if I want to create like a lip, which is not just straight up, but a little bit out, I would just scale. So S to scale, and then just pulling my mouse out until it looks something like that. Do a click to confirm. Okay. And then I'm going to do another extrusion because I'm going to create like another bit, like a little bit of a flat area. Okay. So E. And then I don't actually want to pull it upwards. Obviously, I want to pull it outwards. So what I do is I cancel the movement. And now that I'm in that state, I'm going to hit S to pull outwards like so. By the way, I should show you as well. If after you have like extruded something, like let's say you do this, right? Oops. If you did this, if you extruded and then you like cleared its position, but then accidentally clicked off it, you've now got double vertices all along this line here. And that's horrible because it will create jagged artifacts in it. So this is a really super common problem that you'll experience all the time. And the way to fix it is to select your entire mesh, then hit M to merge, and then you're going to go by distance. And you'll see in the bottom there, that little thing that says removed 32 vertices. And that has cleared up that problem. So I have to show you that because people will do it, it'll happen, and that's how you fix that issue. But again, if you run into issues like this, use my Unstuck Yourself guide. Link is in fix that issue. So I have to show you that because happen and that's how you fix that issue. But again, if you run into issues like this, use my Unstuck Yourself guide. Link is in the description because I did set it up so you guys can hopefully get through this tutorial. All right, so as I said, extrude, clear its like movement, so its placement is exactly where it started from, but then I'm gonna hit S to scale outwards. So now I've got a little flat rim to my plate. And then, now that it's here, I'm going to do one further extrusion upwards. And this is just obviously the design of the plate that I'm choosing. So upwards. Now you can see it's like freehand like that. I don't like it, so I'm just going to lock it on the Z axis. So just hit Z, so it's going straight up like so. Okay, great. We've got a very jaggedy looking plate that you sometimes see in video games. You're playing Call of Duty or something, you get up close and you go like, look at that jagged old plate there. Which by the way is because in games, the plate is like one of a million objects and they can only put so many polys into the scene. So little things, little details on tables and things often end up a little low res. Anyways, go to your modifier stack. And the first one we want to add to kind of smooth this out is our very favorite subdivision surface, right where my head is, or you can access it from the search subdivision. There we go. Okay, cool. And I'm going to go level 2, and we've got that crimping effect happening to the middle of our plate there. So just like before. And actually, let's hide my donut and my icing just so that I can focus on the plate. And I'm also going to turn off the subdiv just so that I can select this single face here. Because just like before, the reason that's happening is it's like right on the edge there. It has to like convert all that into like a single point in the middle. And it's just too ugly when it starts there. So we just may have to make it start way further in the middle like that. And then when we do that, it's clear, it's practically invisible. You can only see it if you get really close, but you won't see it because it'll be under the donut and it'll be smooth. Anyway, cool. Now I can tighten up the edges here because this is looking very, very smooth. So I showed you before how you can add a loop cut. You can do Control R, okay, and that'll add a loop cut in the middle, and then I just pull it out towards the edge like that to make a smoothed, sharpened point. Yeah, anyway, the other way to do it, which I didn't talk about, but you can do a crease. So if we just hold down Alt and then we select that line there, you can do a crease. If you right click, you'll see you've got their edge crease, or the hotkey Shift E. So in this, when you do Shift E, you'll see at the top there, you're pulling out basically a value from 1 to 0. And essentially what it's doing is it's like doing a fake kind of tighten on that edge there. So it's kind of like pulling it out and just making it a sharper point. It doesn't look as nice. You don't get as much of a bevel because there's no geometry being added there like you would if you were to actually do a loop cut. You get all this extra geometry. So it's not as good, but for like small things, it's, you know, it's generally fine to do something like that. All right, I'm gonna do a shade smooth now because I want to see how that looks, and that's pretty good. Now, the only other thing, the exact same thing. It's weird that like 3 things in this small little scene have the exact same 2 modifiers: subserve and solidify. Anyways, generate, solidify. And just like before, we want this solidify to go first because otherwise it's doing it after the fact. And then we get this like really annoying, like hard line there. So just pull that up to the top and now it's rounded. And look at that. But yeah, I might actually want to make this line a little bit harder. So I'll pull that in. It's still, yeah, there's just not enough geometry there. This is one of the cases where you just need more geometry. So I'm going to add a loop cut here. And I'll add another loop cut underneath it. Like that. And now I'm going to just select this. And I'm just going to revert that edge crease. So Shift E. And then I just go like -1. Like so. And now it's just, yeah, the way it was before. But there you go. So now I've got a sharper edge on it. The only other thing, I might just pull up this lip here. So Alt select on that lip, G, Z, and I'll just pull it up a little bit. And there you go. And we would model from reference, but I actually had a photo scan plate from Polygon, which we'll get to later. But yeah, this is just modeling from that reference that I already had, but this is the design of it. So there you go. Great. Now let's bring back our donut and our icing. Now, I saw a comment on the last video that said, you didn't make the donut lumpy like last time. It's so over. Why? Oh, ye have little faith. You think I would forget something like that? Maybe I did forget. But I'm actually glad I did, because this is a great opportunity to talk about a new tool. So for those that haven't watched a previous version, before we did the icing, we made the donut lumpy, which I did by going into edit mode, and then I just selected vertices using proportional editing and pulled it out, right? And just kind of like, maybe I shrink some parts in, this kind of thing. And the reason this is important is that this adds natural variation. Hi. Oh, ye have little faith? You think I would forget something like that? Maybe I did forget. But I'm actually glad I did, because this is a great opportunity to talk about a new tool. So for those that haven't watched a previous version, before we did the icing, we made the donut lumpy, which I did by going into edit mode, and then I just selected vertices using proportional editing and pulled it out, right? And just kind of like, maybe I shrink some parts in, this kind of thing. And the reason this is important is that this adds natural variation, because, you could have scientists working for 1,000 years in a lab and they would never be able to create a donut as perfectly mathematically accurate as our 3D software has done. This is too perfect. There is natural variation, and we need to see that for the eye to go, this is, a real, something realistic, right? And it's hard to do this kind of thing after you've already added the icing, because you can see it just has no bearing on the icing over the top, right? So some things in 3D are easier to do earlier than they are to do later. And this is something you just learn as you do 3D. Like you'll do so many projects where you just you get to the end and you go like, oh man, why didn't I do that before I did this? Now this is I've 3x'd the amount of work, and you just learn these things over time. However, there are certain tools, and there is one I'm going to introduce you to in a second, that enable you to make these sort of changes after. By the way, there is a way, you can select both objects like this, which that is something that you can do in Blender now. You didn't used to always be able to, but you can now edit both objects together. So I could do this. It does have a clipping issue when you try to do shrink fatten, but you can get some natural lumpy variations going this way. And you can do that. That's actually fine. But I do want to introduce you to a new tool that is in 5.0. And it is, if you select both of your icing and your donut together, then you hit Shift A and then you go Lattice. There's a new option for Lattice Deform selected. We always had Lattice, but it was very finicky to set up. But now you've got Lattice Deform selected, and that adds this, what looks like a cube, like a bounding box over your object. But it's not actually going to appear in your render. All it is a deformation guide. So if you just select these points, you can see we are twisting the donut. But importantly, the actual donut is underneath, this is a modifier, right? So we're not actually changing the mesh at all. It's just doing this after the fact. And then if I just deleted my lattice, it's gone. It's back to where it was. So this is a non-destructive workflow. These little points here, they enable me to, at any point in the future, change and deform a mesh, which is actually really useful. And it's because you're not often in the exact circumstance where you know exactly what you're going to do, and then at the end of it, the order in which to do things. Sometimes you're working with a client and they've got an idea for something, and then far later on they're like, you know what, let's change the proportions of the car. Because you're not often in the exact circumstance where you know exactly what you're going to do, and then at the end of it, the order in which to do things. Sometimes you're working with a client and they've got an idea for something, and then far, or whatever it is, and you have to be able to fix it without redoing all your mesh. So that's what a lattice can do. Now it comes by default with just this low res cube over it, but if down here you click this little data property for the lattice, you've got resolution here. So I can increase this, I can add in some more resolution here, and importantly I want to add one in the middle here, because the first thing you notice when you look at reference of donuts is that besides the lumpy shape, the bit around the middle of the donut is often whiter and it's not as puffy. And when you look at how donuts are cooked, it's actually easy to see why. It's half submerged in the oil, and then it is flipped over onto the other side, and then the other side cooks. So it cooks one side and then it cooks the other. And the bits, near the surface of the oil, that's the oil is less hot, right? Because it's near the surface, so it's escaping. So that oil is less hot. The oil that's underneath it is much hotter, and then it flips it over. And so again, you always have this bit around the middle that just isn't quite cooked as well as the other stuff. So it ends up being a little bit lighter. It's also less puffy. So no donut actually comes out at that perfectly round shape. It's usually always kind of almost concave actually around the middle. So with this, I can select all of these points here like so. I have to shift select them. I can't do the alt click around it because it's not technically a mesh. And then I can just scale it in. Like turn off proportional editing if you've got it on, and then just shrink it in like that. And that by itself will add just a little bit of realism to this, because that is a detail that your eye won't notice. Everyone thinks donuts are just, they're perfectly round, but they're actually not, right? They've always got this like concave kind of shape around it. So that will add some realism. But then I can add in some little areas here where one part, it got a little bit more puffy on that side. So that part's a little bit raised up. And obviously this isn't as detailed as if you had, if you were manipulating the torus underneath, right? I can't do like, small details. I can't, sculpt in an area or do some crazy changes, but it's enough in a pinch to do something like this. I'm just going to hide my plate. Which, by the way, you can do it by hitting the eyedropper, which is what I've been doing up there. Sorry, not the eyedropper, the eye icon. You can also do it by hitting H. So you select an object in the viewport, you hit H, and then you hit Alt-H to bring it back. So H or Alt-H is a good hotkey to remember. And then here, so at the bottom here, because yeah, the same thing will happen at the bottom. There'll be parts where like the donut looks a little bit like raised on the plate a little bit. Like this, just around the middle here, like that. There you go, something like that. But this is just a small amount of deformation, right? It might seem unnecessary, but it does help. It really does help things to feel more realistic when you go to the trouble of doing some of this. And it's super, super important. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut. And I can also say apply there. And now I can just delete this lattice. And now it's like I modeled that, right? All those shapes are now like baked into it. And it looks good. As I said before, if you did want to do any more detail, you could, shift select multiple objects, go into edit mode, and then using apply, and then selecting the donut. And I can also say apply there. Apply once I know, and it's super, super important. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut. And I can also say apply there. And now I can just delete this lattice. And now it's like I modeled that, right? All those shapes are now like baked into it. And it looks good. As I said before, if you did want to do any more detail, you could, shift select multiple objects, go into edit mode, and then using proportional editing, you could also do some like more targeted tweaks. If you really wanted to, manipulate the donut, you could do that. So there are things that you can do. It does make a difference. It is important. But it is also optional. But it's an excuse to kind of introduce you to some more tools and things in Blender. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't do it at the start, because we can introduce you to that kind of thing. So, all right, we got a lumpy looking donut. Good for us. Now is the exciting bit. We can talk about rendering. Making this actually look good, because this is gray. This is boring. This is called the 3D viewport view. Okay. The reason this looks boring and flat is that this is cheaper for your computer to actually process just the shapes in like a gray. There's no shadows, there's no lighting, there's no surface interaction or anything like that. This is fast for your computer to see. To create that pretty image that looks realistic with light calculations and everything, that is called a render. And you can do a render by either hitting F12 on your keyboard or by going to render and then saying render image. And now that has taken a snapshot. The problem is it looks like not the view that we were looking at. So we're looking at this view. Why did we get a view up here? The reason is that Blender will always take the render from the camera view. So remember that thing that's like way out in the middle of nowhere we haven't touched? It's taking the view from that camera. And you can look through the camera by hitting the camera view icon over there. So now that I'm here in this view, how do we move it in close? How do we get it close to our thing? So there's a number of like traditional ways to bring a camera into like in Blender. I'll actually show you the way I first learned to do this because it's actually just like natural to me. But then I'll show you the method that actually most people prefer. So you can just, with the camera selected, you can hit G. You can move things around like that. If you want to bring it in, like just zoom to the like straight forward, if you hit G and then middle mouse button, that will like kind of, what's it called? Dolly in and out, which can be very useful. And then if I want to like tilt it, I can like just hit rotate like that, or I can rotate along the Z axis, right? Because I know how to like turn the camera. So that was how I learned to use the camera and how a lot of people still like to do it. But a lot of new people prefer this because now in 5.0, it's actually just a button right here. If you click this button, now I can use the same controls that I used before to move the camera. Because if you don't have that checked, the moment you just like hit your middle mouse to like orbit somewhere else, it leaves the camera behind, okay? But when you're looking through the camera and you have this checked, now when I orbit around and I zoom and I do all the same controls as before, shift middle mouse, I can position the camera exactly where I want it, get it right there without having to worry. You just have to remember, don't then immediately orbit like you're going to go do something. So this is Blender. It can do 3D modeling, leaves the camera behind, okay? But when you're looking through the camera and you have this checked, now when I orbit around and I zoom and I do all the same controls as before, shift middle mouse, I can position the camera exactly where I want it, get it right there, without having to worry. You just have to remember, don't then immediately orbit like you're going to go do something, because the camera is still locked to your view. So you have to make sure you uncheck it when you're done, and then the camera is locked to that position there. And by the way, this is like a small thing, but when you're working with like small objects, you often have to like change, because Blender is like designed for like environment, like big types of scenes. This camera is just too big. So if you go to the camera settings, click the camera thing, then go to viewport display. I just changed the display of this. This has no bearing on the actual like final render. This is just how it displays in your viewport so that it's not so gigantic it's taking over everything. All right. The other way you can quickly look through the camera is numpad 0. So numpad 0 will take you in and out. All right. But now that I'm there, I can hit F12 and look at that. That is a different look. It's still gray because the default material are gray, but you can see there is shadow there. But check this out, we can do even more. So besides just shadow, like you might notice looking at the, by the way, you can bring back a render by hitting F11. I should also mention, by the way, the first time you do a render, I think the first time, like if you've just opened Blender for the first time and you hit render, it'll have to do a bunch of like shader compilations and stuff like that. It should only need to do that once. It shouldn't have to do it every time you open Blender. We're using Eevee, which is a rendering engine we'll talk about soon. But there is some of that every time you render, like when you create a new shader, it has to like develop those things. But anyways, it's the first time it should be slow, but it should be quicker for every render after that. Okay, so there's shadow here, but you'll notice like in here, there's no detail. Whereas in the real world, you would see like bounce lighting from the end of the plate there. You would see like some crevice information. It'd be darker and things. And that is because by default, there's an option that is turned off. So if you go to your render properties at the top there, this has all the information just pertaining to how something is going to be rendered. And by default, ray tracing is turned off, which I think is a mistake. I think they should change it to default on, because so many people don't like Eevee, this rendering engine, because they think it just produces fake looking images. But when you turn on ray tracing, look at how much better that looks. By the way, if you want to compare renders, you can change to a new slot, and then you can do a render, another render, and then you've got the previous render and then the new render in slot 2. And then you can flip back by hitting J on your keyboard. And that's a way you can like quickly compare settings, which is very useful. But you can see with ray tracing turned on, this is off, turned on, we get bounce lighting. So there's some light that's hitting the plate there and it's bouncing up. We've got like more information in the crevices, and it just looks a lot more realistic than it did before. You'll also have reflections when I show you some material properties. So that is something you should have on all the time when you're using Eevee. By the way, there is another rendering engine called Cycles, and it is much more realistic. However, it is a lot more slower. It's honestly, I'm going to show you at the end a comparison between Cycles and Eevee, but it's actually negligible if you know the right settings for Eevee. So I'm going to keep it on Eevee for the rest, which is actually good because Eevee is actually pretty powerful at doing most things. it's a game engine style, so it's a rasterized rendering engine, whereas Cycles is a path trace rendering engine, much more computationally heavy, whereas Eevee is much more faster. So we're going to keep it on Eevee, and I'm going to show you how to get really great results with it. And then at the end, we're going to flip it to Cycles. So if you want to see that final result, you can get it, but we're not going to start there because it's just not necessary. And I don't think most people will actually need it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some materials, but first, you'll notice like it's kind of annoying to have to like render something, like go to render it every time you want to see an image like that. And thankfully, you don't have to, because in the top view here, these little icons, there is a mode here called Render View Mode. And this puts the render in real time. Look at that. I don't have to hit the render to wait to see my result. I can see it in my viewport. So it used to be that like rendering engines were so slow that really to do a render was like a big task. You hit render and it would take hours to process something, and it didn't look anything as good as this, right? But now rendering is like, and computers are so fast that we can just have rendering running constantly whilst we are working, and it's usually not computationally heavy. So this is Eevee, which is the much faster one. Cycles would be a little slower, but still. Anyways, now that we're in render view mode, let's talk about materials. So let's start with the like most different material. Let's go with the icing. So looking at our icing here, if I want to make this look pink and change its overall appearance, if I go down to my material panel down here, or material properties, and then I can just click on new material. And now I've got a bunch of different options here, okay? And these all do different things for the surface appearance. Like metallic will make it look like metal, right? Roughness will change like how sharp the reflection looks. The base color, this is like the main one you want to change for almost every object. This is just the base color of the object. So obviously I can make that look pink like that. Let's pull in here a little bit closer, focus on that. So I can make it look nice and pink. The other thing is it's looking like way too diffuse. It's almost like a chalk looking icing. But if I bring this back, I can make this look more shiny. I don't want to go like too far because then it's like mirror reflection. I want to go like, you know, somewhere around 0.2. The great thing is we can really change these values at any point in the future. So when we add in other objects and there's different lighting setups, some of the settings can look a little off at that point. So it's very common to like, once you've set up all your lighting and everything, to like reevaluate your materials, but it's completely non-destructive. I can change these at any time. And now I could create some very simple materials. Like I could say, let's make this look black, make it like a black, shiny, glossy ceramic mug. So, by the way, you'll notice I'm not going all the way to black. There's a kind of a unspoken, well, it's not unspoken, people speak it. You shouldn't go fully black or fully white. Or like same with like colors. You shouldn't go like 100% saturation on a color because things start to clip. It's maybe a little outdated as like now color management is getting so good. It knows actually how to handle saturated stuff and like dark things, but it's still like a general rule. You never want to go like fully black because things are never truly like the real black is Vanta black, right? Which is like just this material, which is like scientifically created to like emit no reflection, simplifying it. But yeah, so like things will, even a black mug that looks really black to you is probably not entirely black. So it's still, there's going to be a little bit of lightness to it. So I'm just adding that in there. The roughness, this is where I can make this, if I wanted this to look like a, you know, shiny ceramic mug, I could do something like that. These are just placeholders, by the way. I'm just using this as an example of how to create very simple materials. The plate here, let's go, yeah, make it just look a little bit shinier than by itself. And then the donut, let's go give it a, you know, brownish, lightish color like that. Make it a little bit darker, like so. Another value, which is super important for something like icing and the donut, and it's really important for just two things, which is food and characters. And it is that when light hits objects like this, they are mushy, right? They're made of like organic matter. And so light actually enters the object and it kind of scatters around inside it and then it re-exits it. It's the reason why when you like look at your hand in front of a light or the sun or something, you can see the light shining through. You can even see your bones through your hand if it's a bright enough light. So it's called subsurface scattering. And that value is underneath here where it says subsurface. if you go down here, you want to turn the weight all the way up to 1 because this is not the intensity of it. This is just like, apparently this value is supposed to be 0 or 1. It shouldn't be somewhere in between. To control how much of it is the scale, which is how far into the surface will the light penetrate. And then you can see here, you can increase this or decrease this, and you can see the light kind of get into it. Now, by default, it looks red, which I also think is a mistake. It's very suitable for characters because characters need red because inside a character is blood, right? But for every other thing like food, it shouldn't be red. And confusingly, and I know there's a mathematical reason for this because of like how light and the physics of things, but like different wavelengths travel at different speeds, right? Inside the surface, that's how I understand it. So they've made the color of the subsurface R, G, and B separated here. So you can see we've got red as 1, then we've got green as 0.2, and then blue as 0.1. So essentially, I need to clear all those out and make them 1, which, here's a tip, you can drag over multiple values in Blender. So if you just click and drag down across something, and then you can just type in 1 and then hit enter, and it makes all of those 1. And then now I can, tweak this. I can make this look little bit more milky like that. But we can, we can adjust those. I'll do the same thing for my donut here. Give it some subsurface, turn that up, and then I'll set this to 1. And then, let's just leave it at the default value. But you can see that that's with subsurface on. Actually, let me bring the camera in. All right, I'm going to go lock it, bring this in, and I'm going to do a before and after render. So this is how you can use these slots. So this is with subsurface on, then I'll go to slot 2, and now I'm going to select this, and then I'll turn it off, and then I'll do another render. And now hit J back and forth. So that's the difference that subsurface can make to something. You can see here where it's like fully dark, it's actually now the light is passing through it. And that's what gives something a milky kind of look. And it's, as I said, it's mostly true for things like food. You can see it. I take photos of it myself all the time when I'm out and about because I'm like, look at that subsurface. And my family think I'm weird. But I think it's cool. So anyways, there you go. So that's subsurface. All right, I'm going to pull the camera out to here. And then let's add a table because this has to be a table. We're going to do the texturing in the next part. But let's add a table. Now, normally, if it was a table that you were, make sure I turn that off while I orbit around. If this was a large scene, right? Whatever you would have to do, like model an actual table. If you know the camera is only going to be here, doesn't matter about anything except the top surface. So all we need to model is Shift A, plane. That's it. That's our table. I just have to scale it up a little bit, but this is our table. It's actually really common in 3D if you look at like breakdowns of 3D scenes in movies and stuff. Everything is fakery. They're just like buildings are cards. They're just like a plane with a texture slapped on it. Nothing is real. When the camera moves, they might have to like model things properly and people go like, oh, I have to model it now. But like if the camera's here, it doesn't matter. Just make it a plane. There you go. So that's a donut except the top surface. So all we need to model is Shift A, plane. That's it. That's our table. I just have to scale it up a little bit, but this is our table. It's actually really common in 3D if you look at like breakdowns of 3D scenes in movies and stuff. Everything is fakery. They're just like buildings are cards. They're just like a plane with a texture slapped on it. Nothing is real. When the camera moves, they might have to like model things properly and people go like, oh, I have to model it now. But like if the camera's here, it doesn't matter. Just make it a plane. There you go. So that's a donut on a plate with a mug. And that, for somebody who has never used 3D before, that's an achievement. This is the kind of thing that like back in the 90s, you probably would have won like scholarships for and stuff if you could pull this off. This used to be insanely difficult. It is still pretty difficult because 3D is hard. But yeah, if you have, if you're new at it, this should make you proud. You've pulled this off. If you want to save this, by the way, you can go image and then go save. And then you can just save an image, PNG, you got all the options, JPEG, etc. However, if you want to make this look good in the next parts, we're going to be making this look much, much better. by doing some texturing and making our table look good and adding some ceramic textures and things to different objects. But this is kind of the end of the modeling section of the donut tutorial. So we touched on, basic primitives. We add slight deformations. We extruded some things to create like an organic looking shape, did a little bit of sculpting. And then we created a mug, right? And then did some modifiers and subsurf to kind of create the general shape there. So those are kind of some of the techniques that you will need to learn to create lots of different objects in the future. Just some though. But there are so many other techniques and tools, precision modeling mostly with hard objects, how to keep straight lines, and then modeling something that is really custom and deformed, getting those like large-ish shapes there and just kind of like almost using the mesh like a guide mesh to kind of create shapes. And then actual characters, like sculpting a character from nothing and then actually converting that character into something that looks and has like subdivision so that the arm can move, and then rigging that character so that you can actually move the arms like a puppet. So these are the kinds of techniques that we don't have time to go into in the donut, but I do have time to go into in my course called the Beginners Academy. So all of these things you can see on the screen here are taught in that.
Irritating, complicated, thinking it's so overrated. I pray for better. I mean, I'm too put together, then I'm broken hearted. Maybe I should throw a party. No, I hate socializing. I'm sorry that I never take myself seriously. And I'm sorry I can't find on my knee that I have lost my ability to feel anything at all, anything at all, anything at all. I'm just 20 and I'm lost, don't know anything at all. I'm just 20 and I'm lost, don't know anything at all. 'Cause I'm just 20 and I'm lost, it's okay. I'm 20 and lost. I mean, I'm too put together, then I'm broken hearted. Maybe I should throw a party. No, I hate socializing. I'm sorry that I never take myself seriously. And I'm sorry I can find us. I'm just 20 and I'm lost. It's okay. I'm 20 and lost. Introverted, then I'm
Alright game devs, I've been playing around with Blender for a moment now and I want to share with you how I would learn it as a game dev if I was to do it all over again. Blender is a 3D model software packed with so many features, but only a few are really necessary for game development. I did a lot of tutorials like the donut tutorial, which we'll talk about in a minute. I also did paid courses and some exploring by myself with Blender. Okay, so let's assume we never opened Blender before and we want to learn it. What is the first thing you see when you search for learning Blender as a beginner? A donut. Everybody talks about the donut tutorial, but why? It's a very well made tutorial by a guy who knows the software like the back of his hand. I remember doing the tutorial just like every Blender newbie does and barely understanding what I was doing. It's such a dense software with so many features. There's no chance that you will be comfortable with it even on your second playthrough of the donut tutorial. The only thing I got familiar with after finishing the tutorial is following Blender Guru's directions and the very non-intuitive controls. You know that button that you probably only use when scrolling on your browser? Well, now it's the button that you will use for everything. But I digress here. This is not a tutorial about Blender. This is a tutorial about tutorials. So if you really want to attempt the donut tutorial, go for it. The teacher is good, the instructions are clear, and you'll get familiar with the controls and the interface. But if you learn Blender for game development, as we mentioned, I wouldn't bother going past part 5. It's about making a scene and going into more complicated stuff that isn't really game related. Here's what I did once I finished the donut tutorial. I tried doing models by myself. I didn't fully understand the concept of faces, so I wasn't bothered by how many triangles I had when I made my barbecue model. This was not made as a game asset. It was only to practice what I learned and play around with some of the Blender features. I went into as much detail as I could. It took me about 50 hours until I was somewhat satisfied with it, but now I'm looking at it and thinking of how much time and energy I wasted on it. Look at how many faces it has. It's almost as many polygons as the mustache of Snake in Metal Gear Solid 4. What I'm saying is that you might want to skip the donut tutorial. Go straight to learning the fundamentals of game assets where every polygon matters, and don't waste your time with features that you don't need in Blender. The best advice I got about Blender for game dev is to get your mesh to the game engine as early as possible. Blender is great at making assets, but sometimes exporting them to the game engine can be tricky and doesn't go as planned. That's why you want to start with low poly tutorials. Keep it simple, learn the basics, and go up from there. One of my favorite Blender professionals is Grant Abbott with his unmatched calm teaching skills and his UK accent. I did most of his paid courses on GameDev.tv, which sometimes goes on Ultracell on Humble Bundle, by the way, and they are very good. But you don't have to pay to get good courses from him because he has an incredible library of videos on his YouTube channel. Obviously, some of his videos are pointing at paid courses, and I don't mind paying for a course because I like how structured they are, and there's more chance I finish it if I paid for it. I would suggest you to try a few of his low poly model tutorials, then try the rigging model tutorials, and when you feel more confident with your Blender skills, take a look at his sculpting tutorials. This is a must if you want to make high detail models that you can then bake on low poly models. If you don't mind shelling out a few dollars, there's also Stephen Ulibarri, aka Druid Mechanics, who makes mostly Unreal Engine content, but he also has 2 good Blender courses that I recommend. I like his teaching style, he's well articulated, calm, and explains in detail. And if you go to his Discord, he has coupons for his courses. The last way to learn Blender I want to share with you is by starting a personal project and making sure to finish it. One thing I learned from the book Keep Going is that a good way to get good at making art is by gifting it. It will force you to finish your project and you will try to do your best for the people you love. This is when I made an animation in Blender for my son's 3rd birthday. It's nothing to brag about and I didn't have much time to do it, but I had a lot of fun with it, especially making the camera move and adding the sound effects to the animation. Now I look at it and see every single flaw and how bad the details are, but my son was happy and I was too. I felt proud of my progress and it was an effective way to try a lot of Blender features by myself. You learn way more by trial and error than by following a tutorial. My animation might not be a good example for game development, so a good way will be to join a game jam to create some or all the assets by yourself. So go start with a simple tutorial to get familiar with the
Academy. If you only want to learn Blender for free and you just want to do this donut, that is fine. But if you want to go further and you want to learn how to actually think like a 3D artist and take an idea from your head and actually convert that into something that you can use, whether that be for 3D printing or for rendering or for whatever visualization purpose you have, that's what this course is about. It's teaching you those foundational skills to actually create something that you want to create. So if you're interested in that, the link for that is beneath this video. And it is designed for complete beginners who have finished the donut, but you've learned enough now that if you want to jump straight to that, you could. But if you want to continue on, we will jump into texturing next. I will see you in the next video. It's time to texture these bad boys, finally, after hinting at it for so long. So we added some simple materials, and that is actually fine for some types of objects. Like you might actually have a plate and go like, it's just white plate. Doesn't need any texture, but most things need texture. So I'm going to select my table floor here. I'm going to go to the material panel right here, and I'm going to add a new material since it doesn't have one. And let's look at how to add a texture. So right here where we've got base color, if we want to add a color texture, we just click on this little yellow dot next to it. I know that's not clear. It will become clear when I show you nodes. But when I click this, you get this slide out menu with a bunch of different options here. And the one that I'm looking for says image texture. Okay, so now I can hit open. And just to demonstrate this, I'm going to select a wood texture that I downloaded off the internet just to show you how this works. Now, on this note, if you happen to see this, if you use an image texture that you find online, it's because there is a new feature. There's a purpose. There's a new feature in Blender 5.0 where if it identifies in the name anything from the number 1000 to 2000, I think, it'll think that is a UDIM, which is a completely whole, production, professional workflow kind of thing. It'll think it's a UDIM. And anyways, what you need to do is then change this to single image. But most of the time, most images, if it doesn't have those numbers, a string at the end, it should just load in fine. Anyways, let's say you had an image like this. You wanted the table to look wood, right? We're not going to do that, but just to show you, you would see it's okay, right? But there is no bump information, okay? And that is because, of course, the 3D software doesn't know that there's supposed to be crevices here, right? Little dips in between the table, the fine tooth grain of it. It has no idea because it's just taken with a single camera. It would have no idea how to guess what that true information should be. I mean, there is technically a way to guess it, but it never really turns out well. So I'm not even going to bother showing you. So most of the time when you're talking about texturing in 3D and using image textures, like textures from the real world, you don't just grab a random image texture that you find online. You need to use PBR textures, which stands for physically based rendering textures. And there are many different places that you can get PBR textures from. The best website that I think is Polygon, POLIIGON.com. The link is below. And I think it's the best website because it's my website. It's my company, which I created 10 years ago, and it is now the fastest growing texture library online. So we've got photographers all over the world, and they use specialized equipment to go out into the world, and they capture surfaces, usually like photograph the surface like hundreds of times, which is what enables you to actually capture all of that height information, the bump, the shininess, reflectiveness of materials, and actually capture all of the maps that you can see here. For example, these weird looking maps is exactly what Blender needs to make the material look realistic. So we've got a bunch of different categories. Obviously, like almost anything you want to create, you can find the textures on here. But for just this tutorial, if you go to polygon.com/donut, the link for that is also below. But this has the 6 textures that you'll actually need to follow along for this video. They're all free. We've made them free. All you need to do is get a free account, and you can download all of those by just clicking them and then hitting download. And also, if you scroll down, we've got some premium textures here if you have a subscription with us that you could use for the cafe scene that we're making to kind of spruce it up, make it your own, add some variation there. So we've included some ones here that go well with the scene. And if you use this link, you'll get 10% off any plan you choose. So the first texture I want you to start with is going to be our cafe table.
Kitehän pissan paina mun kaumamme lihpurgi. Hatiku. Irritated, complicated, thinking it's so overrated. I pray for better. I mean I'm too put together. Then I'm broken hearted. Maybe I should throw a party. No, I hate socializing. I'm sorry that I never take myself seriously. And I'm sorry I can find on my knee that I have lost my ability to feel anything at all, anything at all, anything at all. I'm just with me and I'm lost, don't know anything at all. I'm just just 20 and I'm lost. Don't know anything at all, cause I'm just 20 and I'm lost. It's okay, I'm 20 and lost. Introverted, then I'm extroverted. I'm afraid to isolate me, but I like being lonely sometimes. People pleaser, but I like me too much to give up